Having traveled with Rudeus before, I knew this meant there were monsters nearby. Sylphie and the others were also on guard. My eye of foresight had yet to pick up on anything.
The next corner, to the left, at the back.
Surprising me with how well she managed to pinpoint this foreign presence.
Can't say exactly how many, but there's a lot.
Just like her to be vague about numbers. Had she forgotten our lessons together, even after how much hard work she put into them? Okay, now's not really the time for that. I'll take a look. Moving as quietly as possible, I edged toward the H-shaped intersection and carefully peered around the corner. There really were a bunch of monsters, mostly slimes and ants. The former were repeatedly coalescing before splitting off again, which made it impossible to know how many there were. Thank goodness! Ghislaine hasn't forgotten her numbers after all. Still, what were these things doing? They're digging through the wall and making shelves? From what I could tell, the ants were carving into the rock, while the slimes collected the resulting rubble and consumed it. They then broke it down inside their bodies before reforming it and spitting it back out to make new shelves along the wall. Basically, this library labyrinth was a maze of hallways they'd created. Doesn't look like there's any danger. I announced, beckoning everyone over. They nervously approached, peeking around the corner as I had moments earlier. Once they saw what was happening, they breathed a sigh of relief.
So they're simply building more shelves.
Orsted did tell me that the monsters here are basically like familiars. I suppose that means they're a bit different from the other beasts we've seen before. With that out of the way, we quickened our pace onward. We must have walked for another 5 hours after that. Each time we came to a corner leading further inward, we turned. But many led to dead ends, and some of the intersections only had hallways leading outward. This made it impossible to reach the center. Nonetheless, we were gradually beginning to find newer and newer books, so I knew we were getting closer. We decided to take a short break. Sylphie and Luke weren't doing too bad, but Ariel was quite exhausted. Most of our party was in excellent physical shape, but Ariel wasn't used to this much walking. She really was a princess in every essence of the word. Meanwhile, the former noblewoman in our party was nearly bored to tears.
This place really is nothing but books. I thought a labyrinth would be a little more interesting than this.
If only she'd learned from Ghislaine's example. Ghislaine looked pleased simply from the exercise we'd gotten from walking this far. Eris, a labyrinth isn't a fun place.
You don't think so? But it's a core part of adventuring. I always wanted to visit one, but this is lame.
You don't say. I didn't have very good memories of being in a labyrinth. Paul had died in one after all. I never wanted to experience something that traumatic ever again. Unless there was a very compelling reason, I was content not to see another labyrinth in my life. Eris should have known what I had been through, but I couldn't really fault her for her interests.
Halls teeming with monsters, untouched treasure just waiting to be discovered, and at the end of it all, a huge guardian monster.
Eris, let it go. Rudy lost his father in a labyrinth, you know.
Huh. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
It's fine. You don't need to apologize. I know you have looked forward to visiting a labyrinth since you were young.
You don't mind?
I just want you to keep in mind that there are truly dangerous labyrinths out there too. Ones that can rob you of a loved one in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, I got it.
Years ago, she would never have apologized so earnestly like that. As we turned a corner, we found ourselves in an open area. It was a ridiculously wide cone-shaped hollow. It had multiple levels, with stairs sandwiched between stretches of shelves. It reminded me of the staggered seats in Rome's Colosseum. In its center was an enormous slime. Its body jiggled, dozens of arms extending from its middle like tentacles, each one holding a pen and scribbling something at a lightning speed. Only one of its appendages was different. It pointed directly upward. It had an enormous eyeball at the tip which was glaring up at the ceiling. The second I saw this creature, one thought ran through my mind. Oh crap! This was, without a doubt, the master of the labyrinth, and we had unwittingly stepped within striking range. I wasn't the only one who sensed danger. Those behind me were similarly speechless. Eris and Ghislaine were gawking, even as they drew their weapons.
What the heck is that thing so...
Thanks, Luke. You said what the rest of us were all thinking. It has to be the ruler of this place. Orsted told me they're a bookworm demon king, but I wasn't quite picturing this.
This one is quite different from Lord Bagatti.
Exactly. I had anticipated something more like Bedigati, but this was far more slime-like than what I had in mind. Then again, there were multiple subspecies of demons, so it wasn't too strange for them to have a slime demon king. But a slime that reads books? Okay. It's not good to judge. I'm sure even slimes enjoy reading.
If this is indeed a demon king, then should we not greet it?
I wonder if it can even talk. There were many types of demons. Some had no vocal cords and therefore couldn't speak. It seemed that this slime might fall into that category. If my past experiences with demon kings were anything to go by, they didn't really listen to people. Granted, Bedigati and Atofe were the only ones I had ever met, but neither of them listened to others. We couldn't judge this slime simply by looking at it, but it'd probably be safer to keep to ourselves. Since it doesn't look like it's noticed us, let's try to keep it that way and move quietly. Silence was one of the golden rules of a library, after all. We resumed our search, being careful to stay quiet. There appeared to be smaller slimes in the area moving around as well. They seemed to be ignoring us for the moment, but there was no knowing what might happen if the larger slime spotted us. None of the familiars looked very powerful, but it was impossible to know for sure, so it was best for us to stay on guard. It could put us in a real pickle if they all came at us at once. What is it? Curious as I was, I couldn't peel my gaze away from the enormous slime at the center of the room.
It's here, Rudy. This area.
What's here? I glanced behind me. Selphie reached out to a shelf along the outside wall, plucking a book from the middle that was titled King Gani's, Rise and Reign. It was one among many. I'd been so distracted by the giant slime that I hadn't noticed it, but apparently this was the area that housed books written in the wake of Laplace's war. It seemed like we'd passed right over the section covering the middle and end of that conflict. But then again, the people back then were probably so busy fighting that they didn't have time to pen books. But once victory was theirs and people's lives began to go back to normal, those who could recount the details of the affair had started writing it all down, and the books in this area likely belonged to such authors. In that case, let's backtrack the last dead end and make camp there.
Yeah, can't say I want to sleep somewhere with that thing in sight.
Agreed. Gives me the shivers just looking at it.
Really, I think it looks quite intelligent.
Swords don't work too well on slimes like that, do they?
A slime will die if you destroy its core. But that one is so enormous your sword won't even reach its core.
Ariel's comment was bizarre, but I was more troubled by how ready Eris and Ghislaine were to go into battle. Thankfully, everyone seemed to agree that we should take our leave. I didn't want to linger near something we knew nothing about and whose movements we couldn't predict. Still, after a long journey, we had finally made it to our destination, and that was cause for celebration at least. A whole week passed after we set up camp. Our group spent the whole time moving between our base and the section of books on King Gani's. We spent each day thumbing through them. At first, we sneaked them out and retreated somewhere the giant slime couldn't see us, before we flipped through the pages and took notes. Then, we carefully returned the book to its rightful place. After 3 days of this, we realized that no amount of racket seemed to draw the owner's attention, so we began doing our research right by the shelves instead. This meant that Eris and Ghislaine had nothing to do, so the two trained with their swords or left to go on walks around the area. I still wasn't sure this place was entirely safe, so I wanted them to be careful, but I couldn't expect them to sit still the whole time. By the 5th day, I gave up worrying about it. There hadn't been any problems with their activities. Meanwhile, we had no lack of materials about King Gani's, which was unsurprising given that he became the monarch of the country that won the war. Gani's was not simply a king in the era that followed Laplace's war. He was also once one of many princes. The literature was a bit spotty on the numbers, some stories said he had dozens of brothers. Others said he was the youngest of three, especially those aimed at children. The one thing they all agreed upon was that he had two older brothers. This lined up with what Ariel seemed to know. The eldest was an impressive and fearless warrior, while the second eldest was a resourceful tactician. Gonis, being the third son, was gifted with both intelligence and strength. It was these three princes that decided to take a stand against Laplace's encroaching army. However, Laplace's troops were powerful. Neither the eldest brute force nor the second eldest's raw tactics could outmatch the enemy army, and so the two of them died. The war culminated in a decisive battle on the central continent's southern front, which finally resulted in the death of Asura's King Gonis' father. Thus Gonis took the throne despite his youth. He was a talented man, but his strength couldn't match that of his eldest brother, nor were his tactics equal to the second eldest. Could someone like him could beat Laplace's army, when both of his brothers and the previous king had already fallen before him? He could. It was, as the literature stated, because he had numerous friends: the dragon god Eurypen, the North god Calman, and armored dragon king Perugius, to name a few of the numerous heroes he called comrades. Gonis went to them and prostrated himself, pleading with them to help him find a way to take down Laplace. 7 heroes answered his call and set off on a journey to defeat Gonis' sworn enemy. The details matched up with what I had read long ago in Legends of the Armored Dragon King. These books also said more about Perugius and his companions' adventures than they did about King Gonis. After the heroes left on their mission, King Gonis consolidated power in Asura Kingdom and rode out to meet Laplace's army. It was one defensive clash after the other, a battle of attrition. However, King Gonis did manage to hold back the enemy's advance, successfully keeping Asura from falling until Perugius and the others returned. He really was the man behind the scenes. As for what kind of person King Gonis was, the literature tended to be pretty unreliable. Most volumes described him as an exemplary ruler, peerless in his majesty and overflowing with talent. They never illustrated exactly how he possessed these qualities, but they showered him with compliments nonetheless. Ariel seemed satisfied with these accounts since they matched up exactly with what she'd heard. But the more I searched, the more I found strange information mixed in with the rest. According to other sources, Gonis was a talentless alcoholic who sneaked into the city to mess around while his gifted elder brothers participated in the war effort. Apparently, he drank and got into fights almost daily. At first, I thought someone who hated the king had written this to smear him, but these accounts gave specific examples of his behavior and the precise dates these events took place, unlike the sources that lauded him. This made them much more believable in my eyes. Even so, I still found myself going, no, that can't really be true, as I read along. All that changed today, when I finally found the most credible source of all. Dated around the final years of the Laplace War, it was a diary written by King Gonis himself. It started before his rise to the throne, when his 2 older brothers were still actively participating in the war. It painted a detailed account of Gonis Free and Asura's daily thoughts and past experiences. Gonis was the black sheep of the family. His 2 older brothers were such geniuses that no one expected anything from him, which only pissed him off. Even if he complained about it, no one paid him any attention. That was why he sneaked out of the castle to hang out in the city all the time. Since there was an active war going on, the city wasn't the safest, but that also made it the perfect place for Gonis to vent his frustrations. He would drink until he was hammered, whine about how unfair everything was, then get into fights. There were no consequences for him wailing on the backstreet thugs in the city. If I had a word to sum up the kind of person Gonis was at that time, it would simply be garbage. After reading his diary, Ariel was so shocked that she spent half a day slumped over doing nothing. Even now she leaned against one of the shelves with her legs pulled to her chest, her expression dark as she mumbled to herself, "Is this it? Is this the kind of king that Lord Perugius is searching for?" Luke and Sylphie were trying to help her regain her composure, but even their voices were strained from the shock at discovering what kind of person Gonis really was. Personally, great king or not, Gonis was a human being first and foremost, so his behavior wasn't all that surprising to me. If anything, it made him easier to relate to, though I have to admit that his behavior isn't very kingly. In spite of that, Perugius had seen fit to support someone like Gonis, so perhaps Gonis being a garbage human being might actually be a hint. Thus, I continued my search. and it was then that I found a deeply intriguing book on blessed children. This tome covered which blessed children had been discovered at the time, what powers they possessed, and what kind of people they were. None of it seemed to have anything to do with Ganes, at least not until I came upon an article that described the powerless blessed child. The title alone made me imagine the opposite of Zenoba, who boasted inhuman strength. Powerless suggested this person was frail and wimpy. Despite my impressions, the power described was deemed extremely dangerous, enough that the text emphasized that anyone possessing it should be killed immediately. A powerless blessed child could disable other blessed children's powers. I had seen this pattern pretty often in light novels with superpowers. In most cases, the person with the ability to disable the powers of others had no other abilities of their own. This often put them at a disadvantage, and others looked down on them. But in these series, the majority of the central characters possessed superpowers, like 90% of them, so the ability to nullify their abilities was game-changing. Naturally, the person possessing this rare gift was typically the main protagonist. Blessed children were so rare in this world, however, that there were probably only a handful of them in existence. Being able to nullify their abilities didn't seem all that potent. If anything, it seemed extremely useless to me. It would be way better to have a sword god-style warrior on your side than someone like that. That said, other blessed children tended to be authority figures in their respective countries. They could create miracles with their powers that one normally couldn't bring about through ordinary magic. For that very reason, it would be a huge disadvantage to a country if their blessed child's power was snuffed out. Other countries would see a powerless blessed child as a nuisance, while their own country would deem them as a worthless liability that only put them under foreign scrutiny. Thus, it was advised to kill such a child immediately. The power described, however, did catch my interest. Powerless blessed children could apparently also dispel the powers of cursed children. They were the same, after all. The only difference between them was whether the power they had was beneficial or not, so it made sense that powerless's abilities would be effective on them as well. I wondered, though, if this ability to erase other blessed children and cursed children's powers could also be used to nullify other things, like regular curses, for instance. The title Cursed Children lent itself to the belief that they had been marked by an actual curse, but the two things were completely unrelated. Since this book didn't explicitly say this was the case, I assumed the powerless's abilities couldn't cure curses, but perhaps I needed to look at the bigger picture. Blessed children possessed all kinds of different abilities. Every single one broke the natural laws of the world. It seemed plausible that one among them could erase curses or turn back the hands of time. In other words, with the right blessed child's power, we might be able to return Zenith's memories to her. That was merely a wishful observation on my part, of course, but it was worth asking Orsted about when I got home. I better jot this down in my diary, lest I forget. I closed the book I was reading and pulled out my diary. Frankly speaking, after reading my future self's journal, I had reservations about continuing this thing, but it had saved my skin. I had no intention of returning to the past, though. I was going to do everything in my power to make sure I didn't have to. That said, I might someday want to entrust my diary to someone. Like when my time came, maybe I'd want to pass on my will. The person reading would benefit from the guidance of all the information I included. Let's see. I discovered blessed children can have a number of different powers. There are even those who can manipulate the abilities of other blessed or cursed children. Perhaps I might be able to achieve something even if that thing seems impossible using these powers. There. That's good enough, I think. I lifted my head after I'd finished scribbling and caught a glimpse of the enormous slime in the middle of the hollow wriggling around as it always did. It had startled me when I first encountered it, but I'd grown accustomed to the sight over the past week. It was no less terrifying than before, but it hadn't launched itself at us. It spent all its time staring up at the ceiling and copying books, which suggested it was intelligent at least. Hold on a second. I might be able to achieve something even if that thing seems impossible? Isn't that a little too vague? Maybe I should write a specific example of what I might use those powers for. Until this point, I had never put much thought into writing anything in detail. Maybe being in this labyrinth had encouraged me to change my ways. Haha. Well, it was time to rewrite that vague portion regardless. I tore out the current page, replacing it with another which I used to rewrite my current thoughts. You know, I feel like this would be so much easier if I had some correction fluid. But how would I go about making that? Or should I just smear white paint on the page? I glanced up, noticing that one of the giant slime's many tentacles had just torn a page from the book it was writing in. I stared silently. Something about it made me wonder. Just to be sure, I scribbled a random sentence in my book. Immediately after, the tentacle began mimicking my movement. I then started blacking out the entire page with ink. The slime did the same thing. Is it copying me? No, that wasn't right. It wasn't copying me, it was copying down what I had written. If it likes books, then that means it must be able to read, right? The slime had no mouth or ears, so maybe it wouldn't understand spoken words, but it did have that giant eye on the tip of one of its tentacles. That had to mean it could read, right? Worth a shot, I guess. But should I consult Ariel and the others before I tried to communicate with it? Nah, that wouldn't do me any good. Ariel is already at her wit's end with our current situation and about ready to give up and go home. It's worth a gamble at this point. Let's see then. Good day to you, Demon King. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am Rudeus Greyrat. This is an incredible library you have here. I recited the words as I penned them in my journal. One of the giant slime's tentacles immediately began racing across the page only to freeze suddenly. It was something we had yet to see it do before. It hadn't merely copied what I'd written. Its other arms had ceased moving altogether. An eerie air settled over the cone-shaped hollow. Am I being too hasty? For a split second I lost my nerve, but it was already too late to regret it now. The giant slime's eyeball, which had been glaring up at the ceiling this entire time, now turned toward me. The thing was enormous. It could clearly see me gaping at it. The slime shrunk back for a moment. In the next second, its tentacles shot outward at an incredible speed, almost like porcupine needles blasting in all directions. My eye of foresight told me, a tentacle is headed straight toward me. I ducked, assuming it meant to impale me. To my surprise, the tentacle stopped right in front of me. It was clutching a single piece of paper. No, that wasn't right. It wasn't clutching anything. Its body was like an adhesive, so the paper was merely attached to it. At any rate, it held the paper directly in front of me. A message scrawled on it that read, I am Demon King Beethove Tovatha of the Nen tribe. Welcome to my castle, future author in the making. Oh! Communication successfully established. I mentally pumped my fists. Wait, no. Hold up a second. Seriously? I just came up with the idea of talking to this thing on the fly. I never dreamed it'd go this smoothly. Now what? I hastily scribbled my reply. My deepest apologies for not paying my proper respects sooner. It truly is an honor to meet you, Your Majesty. We came here in hopes of researching a certain subject. Would you be willing to permit our stay here in the meantime? Its response was succinct and simple. Yes. Phew! I could finally breathe a sigh of relief after being on edge this whole time. I wiped cold sweat from my brow. Okay, I thought. I can actually do this, although next time I should probably have alerted Eris before I try something. That was a little too rash. Still, what an interesting name. It reminded me of a certain composer who had spent their life making music. Orsted had told me this Demon King wasn't such a bad guy, and based on our brief interaction, it seemed he was right. But now what? I thought about what I'd say after striking up a conversation with them. Maybe I could ask after some information relating to Gonies. If they really were the master of this labyrinth, they ought to be knowledgeable about him. Actually, we are looking for a certain book I wrote. Find it yourself, the slime replied instantly. Oof, I thought. That was cold. Then again, we were complete strangers who had appeared out of nowhere. I couldn't blame the slime for turning down what they must have deemed an outlandish demand. At least they weren't chasing us out altogether. However, the slime continued. You have managed to amuse me. Apparently, they weren't simply refusing me as I'd first thought. Flustered, I reached for my journal again and wrote back. Did I say something that funny? The slime replied, You came here carrying a book from the future. That was truly shocking. And now you are currently writing a continuation to its contents as we speak. If you don't call that interesting or entertaining, then what is? As a reward for amusing me, I will grant you one wish. Book from the future? Ah, they must be referring to that diary my future self brought here as in, to this timeline. I hadn't brought it to the labyrinth, and if what the slime was saying was anything to go by, it had probably already copied the contents of that diary. From the slime's perspective, my current journal was a sequel to the previous one. That was ironic. A diary from the past being the sequel to one from the future. I could see how it found such a unique book series so entertaining. All that aside, it sure seemed like demon kings love to reward good deeds by granting people's wishes. Was that a part of their culture or something? A wish? You'll grant me anything I want? I asked. The only thing that I, Beethov Toveda, am capable of doing for you is searching for any book you seek, they replied. Well, given the type of creature I was dealing with, I couldn't expect them to give me vast riches or immortality or anything like that. Now that I knew the parameters of this wish-granting, though, what book should I ask them to find? Singling out a single volume would be difficult. I'd have to know the title to be able to ask for something specific. We had already searched through most of the literature pertaining to Gonis, but we still hadn't found the key we needed. Wait, maybe I should just give up on searching for something Gonis related and ask them to search for any book that might shine a light on a way to cure Zenith of her condition. Given the vast knowledge contained in this library and how enormous this place is, there might be some information on a way to treat her. Then again, it's equally possible there isn't. No, I couldn't ask about that. I hadn't come to this library labyrinth to search for a way to heal Zenith. My priority was Ariel. I came here to help her. Zenith still weighed on my mind, but her condition was stable right now. I couldn't let myself be distracted. If Orsted started to think I was unreliable and decided to abandon me, the man-god might take the opportunity to massacre my entire family. I had to avoid that possibility at all costs. Zenith was important, but she couldn't be my first priority right now. I had to forget about her. Oh, that's right. I suddenly remembered the slip of paper I had tucked inside my pocket. It was the one Orsted had passed to me right as I was leaving. It had a book's cover drawn on it. He'd likely anticipated that we wouldn't find what we were looking for, which was why he'd handed it to me. Maybe he'd meant for me to show it to the Demon King. He did mention he could see the future or something like that. In that case, I wrote, I would like you to find a book with a cover that looks like this. Very well, replied the slime. I handed them the piece of paper, and a split second later, they plucked a volume from one of the shelves in the room. Apparently, the volume had been right nearby all along. The slime grabbed the book, drew it inside its body, and transferred it to the tentacle that dangled in front of me. I grabbed it, expecting it to be dripping with slime goop, but to my surprise, it was perfectly dry. Guess I shouldn't be surprised. This slime is a bookworm, so of course they know how to handle books properly. I glanced down at the tome. It had a red leather cover adorned with trees bearing fruit, and it was particularly thick. I thumbed through it, giving it a cursory glance. The pages were covered in writing, squished tight from margin to margin. Your wish has been granted, wrote Beethove. Take your time and enjoy reading it. It then retracted its tentacles and resumed its copying work once more. What if this book happened to have the same cover as the one I was looking for, but it wasn't the right one? Could I ask for an exchange? Granted, the back cover even had the same scribbles on the edge, so the chances of this being the wrong book were slim. Well, at any rate, guess it's time to crack this thing open. I sat myself down and flipped to the first page. I barely made it several lines down before I gasped. This book is... I wasn't sure yet whether it had the clues we needed or not, but I did know for certain that I had to show this to Ariel immediately. When I made it back to our camp, Ariel was still sitting there hugging her knees to her chest. Sophie and Luke were nowhere to be found, let alone Eris. Perhaps they'd all left to look for more materials to sift through. In their stead, Ghislaine remained at the princess's side, not unlike a guard dog. I stepped in front of Ariel. Since she was wearing a skirt, her white underwear was in plain view, but I tried to avert my gaze. Eris and Sylphie might not be here watching, but that didn't mean I could sneak a peek. That was forbidden territory.
Oh, Lord Rudeus.
You must be exhausted, Your Highness.
My apologies for letting you see me like this.
She adjusted her posture, sitting more gracefully this time. Farewell, blissful white underwear. Our time together was short. Anyway, that didn't matter right now. Princess Ariel, I found something good.
Something good? What could that be?
Something I think will excite you.
What could that be? A sensual novel penned around the time Asura Kingdom was founded.
Would something like that really excite her? I wondered.
Oh, pardon me. I digress. What is it you have?
Now that she was mentally backed into a corner, she was babbling all kinds of strange things, which was amusing. Perhaps it wouldn't be such a bad idea to leave her in this state for a bit longer. But then again, we didn't have much time before we had to head for Asura. We didn't have time to waste playing around like this. This, I said, handing her the book I was holding.
These things hanging from the trees, it's the bat emblem.
Oh, so those were bats and not fruits? Could have fooled me. Anyway, please go on and read it. I promise it will be more exciting for you than a sexy novel. She furrowed her brow skeptically as she stared at the cover. Finally, she opened it to the first page. Ah, she gasped in realization as she made it through the first few lines. She had discovered the same thing I did moments before. This was Derek Redbat's diary. A diary is where one records the mundane goings-on of their everyday life. It allows one to briefly sum up recent happenings, keeping things simple and to the point, while expressing the emotions one is feeling at the time. Indeed, a diary is not merely a series of events. It is a record of the writer's feelings. The author writes about what angered them, what brought them to tears, what made them laugh, what brought them pleasure, what brought them pain, what prejudices they hold. They write about when they feel lonely, happy, lustful, and every other emotion in between. The way these things are recorded is at once detailed and yet vague. In Derek's diary, he never mentioned his own name, but he wrote daily about Ariel and Luke. It was an ordinary casual journal, one you might find anywhere in the world, and it was for this very reason that his true thoughts were contained within. There was intense pride in his words, beyond what I would have expected. I couldn't hide my shock at how much he truly believed in Ariel at his core, more than anyone else I had ever met before, and I knew well enough how much charisma she possessed. Ariel began combing through the book. She devoured every word quietly and methodically. I decided to wait nearby until she finished. As I watched her turn the pages, Sylphie, Luke, and Eris returned. They were carrying armfuls of books. They had located a veritable mountain of material regarding Gawnies on another bookshelf. When Sylphie and Eris noticed me staring at Ariel, their expressions turned sour, at least until they noticed how absorbed Ariel in the book was. Sylphie quietly took a seat beside me, no longer pouting about my attention being focused elsewhere.
Rudy, what's going on?
I found an interesting book, so I'm having Princess Ariel read it.
What book is that?
Derek Redbat's diary. Luke's jaw dropped. He stared at Ariel.
Come to think of it, he did write in that thing practically every day.
You should consider reading it afterward as well.
Yeah, guess so. Though I'm sure he didn't have very nice things to say about me.
I shrugged. That was something he'd have to read to find out for himself.
Anyway, it's incredible you were able to find something so specific like that.
Yeah, well, I sort of have a thing with diaries. I opted not to share that I'd found it with intel from Orsted. It was true. Anyway, I really did have a connection with diaries. There was the one I'd written, the one Gawnies had written, and now the one Derek Redbat had written. After a while, Ariel finally finished reading. She closed the book with a snap. Her expression was devoid of any real emotion and difficult to read, but she was obviously feeling something given her blushing cheeks and misty eyes.
Princess Ariel?
Luke immediately went to her, taking a knee at her side.
Oh, Luke, you should read this too.
As you wish.
Ariel handed the book to him before turning toward me. The hesitation in her eyes had vanished completely. She must have discovered something while reading that book, something that I, as an outsider, wouldn't have been able to catch. Whatever her epiphany was, it was probably something Derek would have told her directly had he still been alive. Well, Princess, were you pleased with it?
Yes, you did an excellent job finding it. I now know the answer to Lord Perugius's question.
There was such strength in her eyes. I could only nod silently. After that, we we began our preparations to return home. Sylphie and I started returning the books we had borrowed, while Eris, Ghislaine, and Luke cleaned up our campsite. There was no drop-off where we could leave these tomes, so we had to accomplish the difficult task of putting them back exactly where we'd found them. We scrambled back and forth, trying to put them in the right place, but apparently failed a few times. I only knew because a slime would come along and snatch the book from where we'd shelved it, rushing off to return it to its rightful place. Part of me thought we should entrust the task of organizing all these books to the Demon King's minions, but leaving behind a bunch of books without putting them back where we'd found them was obviously bad etiquette. This library admittedly had a terrible organization system, but it did contain a wealth of information. There might come a day when we needed to use this place again, so it was in our best interest to mind our manners. If I managed to stay on Demon King Beethoven's good side, he might be willing to find a book for me again. With that in mind, we managed to return all the books before finally making it back to the campsite. Everyone else had already finished packing by that point and were left twiddling their thumbs as they waited for us. Eris was bored out of her mind, sitting with both legs stretched out in front of her. Ghislaine had hers crossed beneath her as she meditated. Ariel sat gracefully beside Luke as she waited for us to finish. Luke was still cradling Derek's diary in his arms, tears welling in his eyes.
I can't believe this. I was such an idiot.
Luke, that goes for both of us.
Your Highness.
Ariel smiled at him, and the tears finally broke loose, streaming down his cheeks. Her face strained as she watched him. Having read some of the diary, I already knew what Derek thought of Luke. None of it was good, at least on the surface. He even wrote about what a rotten brat Luke was, teaching Ariel nothing but bad behavior. Yet it was clear from the way he wrote just how deep his affection for Ariel was. Derek could sense that, despite Luke's youth, the boy had a knack for dealing with people. If Luke started using that natural talent on men as well as women, he could climb the ranks and have followers of his own someday. Simply put, Derek expected great things from him in the future. Even as he complained about Luke's ridiculous preoccupation with women, he also saw potential behind that veneer. If Derek were still alive, Ariel and Luke might not be as passionate about taking the throne as they were now, but if he could see them now, he would probably be more than happy to lend them his aid, though if he really were here, Sylphie would have no place with them. Derek had watched them both closely and had great expectations for what they could eventually accomplish. I glanced at Sylphie, who was standing beside me. Her face was pulled into a conflicted expression as she watched her two friends. Maybe this wasn't such a happy development where she was concerned. She had considered herself one of the founding members of their group, but this diary dispelled that notion. I considered pulling her close and stroking her head, telling her that she still had me, so there was no need to worry, but I got the feeling that wasn't what she needed right now. While I was preoccupied with my thoughts, Sylphie mumbled, "Okay, here goes." Having plucked up her courage, she stepped toward her two friends and knelt down.
Hey, you two.
Sylphie.
Ariel and Luke both wore awkward expressions as they looked at her. They hadn't done anything wrong, but I could understand why they felt guilty. They had always treated her like she'd been with them from the start. Wonder what she plans to say to them. My stomach was knotting up in anxiety.
This Derek person, when we get back home, could I ask you to tell me more about him? Since it seems like he had such great expectations of you both, I'd like to know about him too.
Of course. In fact, I want you to know more about him. He was the first person to recognize Princess Ariel's true potential.
Ariel was silent, but the way she smiled made it clear that she agreed with everything he'd said. Sylphie grinned, pleased at their reply. I clapped a hand over my mouth without even realizing what I was doing. Watching them filled my heart with such emotion. I recalled Sylphie in her younger years, back when we lived in Buena Village. She was always all by herself, bullied by the other children. I was the only friend she had, and when she thought I might leave, her eyes had filled with tears. But look at this now. That lonely little girl now has such amazing friends. I hadn't done anything to help her along. Ariel and Luke were friends Sylphie had made on her own. It was admittedly a little sad to realize that she no longer belonged to me and me alone, but this was a good thing. I was certain. I wouldn't have thought so in the past, but this was the way things should be. Neither I, nor anyone else, should be watching over her as a protector. She needed to be an equal, both in our relationship and in her friendship with Ariel and Luke. She had managed to cultivate those relationships on her own. She was also trying her best to stand on equal footing with me, too. That means I need to match her efforts. When it came to friendships and equals, the first people that came to mind for me were Cliff and Zenoba.
Hey, Rudeus.
I glanced to my side. Eris was standing there, bumping her elbow against mine. What could she want? Maybe she was jealous that I'd had my eyes glued on Sylphie this entire time. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you out. We're married now, so I'll be sure to shower you with just as much. Eris was glancing behind us, down the corridor. What could she be looking at? Ugh. I gasped as I finally realized what had caught her attention. The hallway was filled with an enormous number of slimes and ants. Both were gleaming red. In the former's case, it was their core emitting light, while in the latter's case, it was their eyes. At any rate, it was clear they were pissed. Filed it? The swarm spoke in groans, though it was hard to tell how they were producing that noise. Either way, they were slowly making their approach. Why? Why are they angry? We have returned the books to their proper places. I didn't know where Derek's diary belonged, so I planned to hand that back to the Demon King and pay my respects before we left. It was the only book we still had. You defiled it. You defiled it? Oh. I jerked my head around to face Luke. He was staring at the army of monsters with his mouth agape. Realization only dawned after a moment as he glanced down at the book he was holding. His tears had soaked into the page, making the ink bleed so much that some of the words were indistinguishable.
I'm terribly sorry.
Luke hastily apologized, snatching a handkerchief from his pocket to dab at the book.
No, Luke, you can't do that.
She cried, trying to stop him, but her warning came too late. His attempt only caused the ink to smear even more, and thanks to his tears weakening the integrity of the paper, it tore under the force of his hand. Grah! Behind the ants, a Cthulhu snail came charging at breakneck speed. The ants opened their jowls and the slimes shrunk inward on themselves. They were so enraged that they had lost their senses. Eris reflexively jumped in front of us. Sorry, we really didn't mean to do it. I cried out from behind her, but my plea fell on deaf ears. The slimes lunged at us, and Eris and Ghislaine lunged forward to cut them down. In a single stroke, they managed to slice 6 of the slime's cores in half, leaving poopy puddles on the ground.
Rudeus!
I wanted to thank the Demon King for going out of their way to accommodate us, and I wanted to apologize for defiling one of their books. I hoped at the same time they might be willing to hear our side of the story. Alas, these creatures had gone berserk with fury. They wouldn't listen to reason even if we tried to talk it out. Let's make a run for it. I turned to grab our luggage. Sylphie and the others moved swiftly, following my lead. Luke was the only one who lagged behind, still gobsmacked that his actions had triggered all of this. Fortunately, he was accustomed to hastily retreating. He grabbed what was left and drew his sword so he could protect Ariel in case anything slipped past our defenses. Mushoku Tensei, Vol16 by Raifajin Namagano, cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audio drama like this, please visit artale.ai and use promotion code ARTALE to activate your account. Now, enjoy the story. Sylphie.
Right. Lei, take the lead. Everyone, follow me.
All I had done was call her name, but that was enough for her to interpret my instructions. So this is what they call being on the same wavelength. Maybe it was merely a coincidence, but it made me happy nonetheless. Ghislaine, you back Sylphie up. Luke, you stick by the princess and keep her safe. Eris and I will provide cover.
Provide cover? Provide cover from where?
From the rear? I turned my staff toward the encroaching slimes. Sorry, Lord Beethove, but Luke had no ill intentions. Okay, admittedly, he was probably one of the man-god's apostles, so it was possible he was operating on the man-god's orders. No, that's crazy. I don't think that was it. Well, regardless, sorry, Demon King. Frost Nova! Ice formed at the tip of my staff, triggering a cold blast that rippled outward. The monsters hit by it instantly began to freeze, but their movements didn't stop completely. My spell had only slowed them down. Apparently, they had resisted the full effect, but delaying their advance was good enough.
Yeah.
Ghislaine whipped her sword through the air, instantly slicing through the enemies, blocking our path. She cut through the slimes and ants like they were butter. She would have used that momentum to continue charging forward, but a Cthulhu snail stopped her advance. Her attacks glanced off its shell with a clang. Its club-shaped tentacles contracted before going on the counterattack. In modern terms, it was like a tank that had suddenly whipped out a lance and started going on the offensive with it. With no other options, Ghislaine took to evading its onslaught.
Ice Lance.
The snail had managed to keep itself safe by hiding in its shell, but its underbelly was unprotected. Sylphie's lance jutted through the earth, skewering the creature.
Now let's go.
Right? Sylphie charged ahead, breaking through the enemy's ranks with Ghislaine hot on her heels. Ariel and Luke scrambled along behind them, but an ant that had avoided my frost nova by skittering across the ceiling came crashing toward them.
Ha!
Eris immediately moved to intervene. Her swing was so heavy, it severed the creature's head from its body before leaving an impact crater on the floor. Stone cannon! Without missing a beat, I launched a spell at it. These insect-type creatures could sometimes keep moving even without a head. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. Finishing the enemy off was an ironclad rule of battle, but considering how graciously the Demon King had allowed us into their library, I did feel a bit guilty slaughtering their familiars like this.
Now things are getting interesting.
Interesting? It's giving me a stomachache. I grumbled as I hurried after Ariel and the others. Damn it, just how many of these creatures are there? The Horde's pursuit was unrelenting. Despite how unassuming they looked on their own, these beasts held quite a lot of power. The slimes in particular were far quicker than they initially appeared, like the metal slimes in Dragon Quest. If we paused for even a second, those ants would be on us, and their jaws were powerful enough to chomp through the toughest bedrock. But the worst of them were the Cthulhu snails that came charging from the front. If Ghislaine and Eris didn't use the full force of their blades in their attack, it would merely glance right off. Even if they managed to cut through, it wasn't enough to instantly kill the beast. It would still swing its club-like tentacles at us. Thankfully, the library labyrinth had no rooms and was instead a collection of interconnected hallways. So, as long as we kept up a solid defense in the front and back of the line, they wouldn't be able to completely surround us and kill us off. Sophie and Ghislaine took point, guiding us along, while Eris and I covered the rear. I kept unleashing Frost Novus while Ghislaine cut a path ahead. Sylphie continued launching ice lances from the ground below, skewering every snail, and Eris cleaned up whatever was left. We slowly inched forward while making sure nothing sneaked up behind us. We had an exhausting number of enemies, but we were at least making some progress forward.
There, ahead.
Kylane's sharp voice cut through the air. I snapped around. Ahead of us was an enormous swarm of slimes all clumped together. In the blink of an eye, they morphed into a single enormous slime that completely blocked our path. You have got to be kidding me. Really? Now we have to face a king slime?
Tornado impact.
Sophie launched her magic at it, and Ghislaine brought her sword down upon it, but the king slime recovered from the damage almost instantaneously and continued to block us.
Rudy, I can't handle this thing.
I'll take it from here. I hurried forward, taking Sophie's spot so she could fall back to help Eris cover our rear. It was a seamless transition. I didn't have to give her explicit instructions. She moved on her own. Come to think of it, this is the first time the two of us have ever fought against something together, isn't it? She's got more guts than I thought. Honestly, it wasn't my doing. She was the one picking up on my silent cues and reacting appropriately. In the split second where we brushed past one another, our eyes met. Her expression betrayed the panic she was feeling. But in that moment, her lips eased a little and her ears twitched. Perhaps the same thoughts had crossed her mind, and with them a twinge of happiness and embarrassment. Whoops, hold up. Now isn't the time for that. All that aside, this slime was enormous. I wondered if the Demon King had come into existence the same way. No, that couldn't be. This thing had a huge number of cores inside it. It wasn't a single entity but a conglomeration of many, which meant the best way to break it down was… Ghislaine, I'm going to launch a powerful blast and break it into pieces. I want you to take down as many of the smaller slimes as you can.
Got it.
She wasn't spacing out or anything, but I gave her detailed instructions because I didn't want her charging in at the same time I used my magic. I took a deep breath and started concentrating mana into my right hand. I needed a spell that could blast a hole right through the giant slime. Sylphie's Tornado Impact was an advanced spell that made wind rotate rapidly, almost like a drill. It had punched a hole in the creature, but without enough force to break it into pieces. I needed something that would cause destruction, not in a single concentrated spot, but across a wide area, and that had more power behind it than Sylphie could muster. Improved Sonic Boom. What I unleashed was a shapeless shockwave. As the name implied, it was similar to Sonic Boom, which was an intermediate spell, but added a punch that far exceeded the base spell in power. The force caused the creature to shatter into splintered pieces.
Grah!
As if refusing to be outdone by the tremors that rippled through the floor and walls, Ghislaine let out a fierce roar and charged forward. In one blink of an eye, she sliced through the cores of at least a dozen of the slimes. Huh? I gasped, realizing that another enemy lay in wake behind that wall of enormous goop. No, not one. There were 5 Cthulhu snails. They had stopped their advance momentarily when the aftershock of my attack hit them, but just as quickly, they were back on the move, charging toward us. The snails managed to slip past Ghislaine and closed in on me.
Rah!
Ghislaine leaped back, slamming her sword into one. She must have found a weak spot in its shell, because that was enough to stagger it. It collided with one of the nearby shelves and was buried in a mountain of books. I grunted, launching stone cannons at 2 of the others. The spell split the air with a screech, piercing straight through the creature's shells and leaving a goopy mess in their wake before blasting out the other side. Sadly, that wasn't the end. Snail guts went spraying everywhere, but even after being doused in its companion's innards, a 4th snail continued sailing forward. Ghislaine moved to block it, standing between me and my would-be attacker. But there's still one left, right? That's only 4 down. By the time I thought that, it was too late. I sucked in a breath as my eye of foresight spotted the 5th one. It had hidden in the shadow of the 4th one and sneaked up, unnoticed. The cudgel of its tentacle filled my vision. Too late to counterattack. I had to dodge it somehow. In a split-second decision, I jerked my upper body back. Eh? It caught my flank. I had managed to avoid the tentacle, but the snail still rammed into me, sending me backward. Kuh! I slammed into a bookshelf so hard, the air was knocked from my lungs. Shit! They managed to break past us. The snail that had slammed into me was now bearing down on Ariel. The princess was trying to fight back as best she could. She had a small sword, her eyes wide as she met the beast head-on. Panicked yet determined, she didn't tremble in fear. She must have faced surprise attacks like this countless times before. Even so, the snail was on a rampage, brandishing its tentacles as it barreled toward her. I didn't think Ariel could handle it. I lifted my right hand, conjuring a stone cannon to launch at the snail. It's okay, I'll make it in time. But at that same moment, I saw something else at the edge of my vision slimes. The appearance of the snails had distracted Ghislaine from cutting them down. Those that escaped her blade earlier slipped past the fallen snails and charged toward us. Ghislaine, meanwhile, had yet to finish off the 4th snail. Doubt hit me, but it wasn't enough to slow down my spell. Stone Cannon. It split the air, slamming into its mark precisely as intended. A pleasing, familiar boom echoed as it shattered the snail's body. In that instant, the slimes dodged Ghislaine and rushed toward Ariel. Only a single man stood between them and the Princess Luke. He'd likely been preparing to face the snail until I killed it. His focus then shifted to the 10 encroaching slimes. 2 of them split off toward me as I knelt beside one of the bookshelves. 3 others retraced their path to flank Ghislaine. I focused my eye of foresight on the 2 approaching me. I calmly dealt with them while keeping my eye on Luke. His preemptive strike at the 5 surrounding him managed to kill 1. However, the other 4 were already moving in sync. One launched itself at his feet, while another slammed into his stomach. Luke collapsed onto one knee, at which point the 3rd slime wrapped itself around his sword, while the last of their number aimed an attack at his unprotected head. Luke took a heavy blow to the skull. Blood gushed from his forehead and sprayed out of his nose, but that wasn't enough to stop him. He pulled a short sword from its sheath on his waist and stabbed the slime wrapped around his main weapon. With it freed, he took down 2 others that had lunged at Ariel.
I won't let you lay a finger on Princess Ariel.
Alas, there was still 1 slime left, the one that had landed such a fierce blow on his head. Luke had turned his back on it to cut down the others, and it now launched itself at him, aiming for the back of his head. Despite how soft its body looked, it packed the punch of a cannonball. If it hit the wrong spot, it could shatter his skull. Fortunately, the slime didn't hit its mark because Ariel drove her sword straight into its core. It turned into formless goop and spattered in a puddle on the floor.
Princess Ariel, I'll pee the end.
Luke, in times like these, I have no intention of remaining a simple wallflower.
She grinned. With that, the way forward was clear. Ghislaine cast a grim look at me. Onward! I commanded, peeling myself off the floor. I bathed the party with healing magic as I scrambled to rejoin her at the front of our formation. Guilty as I felt for ruining such a touching scene, we had a flood of enemies charging at us from behind. We needed to get a move on. After that, we continued mopping up our opponents as we rushed toward the exit. The beasts tried all manner of tactics to stop our retreat. Slimes formed walls. Snails came in droves. Ants scuttled across the ceiling and tried to drop down on us en masse. When enemies inevitably slipped by, Luke fiercely protected the princess as if his life depended on it. Ariel also did her part with her own magic and short sword, taking down whatever came her way. Thanks to these diligent efforts, we reached the teleportation circle mostly unscathed. If Ariel had been a mere wallflower, or if Luke had revealed himself to be the man-god's apostle and stabbed someone in the back, our formation would have undoubtedly crumbled. Even so, this was still a failure. I had hoped to return here if we ever needed to research anything else, but alas, that now seemed impossible. We had killed no small number of the Demon King's minions and damaged numerous books during our retreat. Who would have thought that someone crying on a book would piss them off this much? The one note of hope was that these familiars moved more like puppets than actual sentient beasts. But even if they were mindless machines, we had still destroyed them. I'd be pretty thick-skinned to use their lack of sentience as an excuse to weasel forgiveness out of the Demon King. No. Even with a letter of apology, I was pretty sure he wouldn't let any of this slide. At least there were a few upsides. Whether or not Luke was one of the man-god's apostles, he proved he would still protect Ariel with his life. And Ariel had found her answer to Perugius's question. We got what we came for. We cleared our objective. That was good enough for now. Chapter 8. The Armored Dragon King and the Second Princess. 12 spirits were gathered in Chaos Breaker's audience chamber. Silverol of the Void, Aromanfi the Bright, Yeruzu of Atonement, Carawante of Insight, Scarecoat of Time, Clear Knight of the Roaring Thunder, Dotboth of Destruction, Trophimus the Wave, Harkenmail of Life, Gal of the Great Earthquake, Furious File of Furious, and Paltempt of Darkness. Armored King Perugius Dola, the owner of this floating fortress and master of the spirits, sat at the very back of the room. Standing before him was the second princess of the Asura Kingdom, Ariel Anemoy Asura. Even as she stood surrounded by these intimidating spirits, she didn't cower. As soon as we left the labyrinth and made our return, Ariel flagged down Silvaril, requesting a meeting with Perugius in his audience chamber. An hour later, he summoned Ariel to a meeting, and she had spent the intervening time fixing her attire. Sylphie and Luke did the same, changing out of their adventuring gear. The outfits they donned were as impressive as you'd expect for a princess and her 2 bodyguards. As for me, I was wearing the robe that Orsted had given me. It wasn't eye-catching or ostentatious, but the dragon god had bestowed it upon me, making it like a sort of work uniform. Surely Perugius wouldn't mind. Ariel silently walked down the path lined with spirits, a bold smile on her face. Unfazed by the gazes fixed upon her, she came to a stop in front of Perugius and curtsied. Sylphie and Luke took a knee. Of course, I followed their lead this time.
I am ever so grateful that you have taken the time to grant me an audience.
Enough with the ceremony. What do you want? Based on your outfits, I assume this isn't merely an invitation to tea. And quite is. I assume this isn't merely an invitation to tea.
Perugius said, as if pretending to be clueless. Surely Silviral had already filled him in. There was no way he didn't know what this was about. His reception was flippant and cold, but he did agree to an audience, so maybe this back and forth was little more than formality.
Lord Perugius, I have come here to seek your aid in my bid to become king of Asura Kingdom.
Oh? Then allow me to ask you once more. What is the most important thing a king must possess?
The most important thing a king must possess is...
I hadn't heard her answer yet. Ariel said she knew it, but there was no guarantee it was the right answer. Of course, even if she had told me what it was, I wouldn't have known if it was correct either. Still, I wish she'd discussed it with me beforehand, just to be on the safe side. No, let's have a little faith in her. She's got this much confidence in herself, so her answer can't be too far off the mark, surely.
Determination to carry on the will of those that came before them.
Her words echoed in the otherwise quiet chamber. It was so quiet aside from her voice that it was hard to believe 17 people were present.
Oh?
Perugius exhaled. His expression was still unreadable, giving no hint whether she'd hit the mark or missed it entirely. Determination to carry on the will of those that came before them. That was the answer she'd arrived at, and I could understand why. Her path to the crown began with death. Derek was the first to fall. 13 of her other retainers joined him, pushing her to where she was now. I knew what kind of people they were and what future they hoped for, because she'd told me. Through his words, Derek had communicated his will for her to carry out. Even after his death, Ariel tried to live up to what he saw in her. There were surely countless others who had placed their hopes in her. That was the foundation upon which she would become king. Then there was Gaunis Phrygian Asura, Perugius's close friend, and a man who rose to prominence during a time of war. Our arduous research had revealed that he'd once been a total scumbag, one who was sociable with a number of close companions. Gaunis ventured into town nearly every day to guzzle booze and pick fights with adventurers and mercenaries. However, like any other human being, he surely had days where he was in good spirits. Days where he'd drink just the right amount that it'd lower his inhibitions enough to rag on the royals and nobles to any adventurer or mercenary who would listen. They would no doubt humor him while smiling awkwardly and occasionally pitch in when he needed help. Likewise, he would listen to their requests as well. In times of war, adventurers, mercenaries, and low-ranking soldiers were considered expendable pawns. Gaunis met them at their level and listened to their final wishes at least. That's what I gathered. And then he went on to become king, not because he wanted to, but because he had no other choice. There must have been nobles and knights who weren't pleased to see him ascend the throne, but not among the adventurers and mercenaries. They supported him. That was why Perugius and the others left on their journey to take down Laplace, and ultimately succeeded. They were compelled to aid someone who honored the last wishes of the nameless soldiers who fought and died on violent battlefields. While Perugius and his party were away, Gaunis succeeded in fending off the invaders. Of course, that wasn't just through the help of adventurers and mercenaries alone. Their efforts would have failed unless they all came together to halt Laplace's relentless advance. Somewhere along the line, the nobles and knights must have caved and decided to support him. Not because he'd inherited the wills of the deceased, probably, but because he was carrying on the will of his fallen father and brothers to protect Asura. With this connection to Gaunis, it surely had to be the right answer. But was it really? Personally, I did think it was kind of low-hanging fruit.
Carrying out the will of the deceased, you say? In other words, your desire to become king is entirely contingent upon the will of other people. You think someone like that can truly be a king?
Yes, you are entirely right, Lord Perugius. My desire is contingent upon the will of others. I am sure that is a far cry from what the rest of the world would consider a true king. But if I can be the king those who entrusted their wills to me hope for, then I do not mind if I am not a true king.
Oh, and you would ask me to aid a king as foolish as you?
Yes, if I am such a fool, all the more reason I should be hoping for your assistance.
Oh boy, I don't like where this is headed. Ariel had given him a thoughtful answer. Instead of obsessing over what made a true king, she would focus on fulfilling the wishes of those who had died for her. That was the kind of leader she would be, a king of the people, whose policies reflected their wishes. Whether that was the correct answer or not, it was an admirable goal. Alas, it seemed to be a far cry from what Perugius had hoped for.
Do you really think your answer is enough to compel me to aid you?
No, I do not, my lord. However, these are my true feelings. No lies, no obfuscation. This is the king that I, Ariel Anamoy Asura, wish to become. If you reject what I stand for, then I have no need of your power.
Her words were dismissive. Even Perugius was caught by surprise, his eyes widening. A ripple of shock ran through the 12 spirits gathered. Sylphie and Luke were taken aback, and so was I. I knew we needed Perugius's assistance for victory, so we'd be in hot water if he really did turn her down.
You think you can attain the throne without my assistance?
If my ideals are so vastly different from yours, then I think your aid would be more of a hindrance than a help.
Perugius dropped his hand from his cheek and slowly stood up. His features were tight with fury, mouth stretched in a thin line and eyes widened. He hadn't balled his fists, but his shoulders were squared. Suddenly he raised a hand. Momentarily I imagined all 12 the spirits lunging at Ariel. But that wasn't what happened.
Well spoken, Ariel Anamoy Asura. You have made your conviction clear.
I had tightened my grip on my staff, concentrating magic at the tip, intending to defend Ariel if I had to. Perugius's words gave me pause.
I, Armored Dragon King Perugistola, hereby swear upon the name of my deceased friend Gorni's Freon Asura that I will aid you in your quest. I will prepare a teleportation circle for you. Return to the palace as soon as you can, set everything in place, and call me when you are ready.
Thank you, thank you.
Sylphie and Luke bowed even lower. I froze, hands still tightly gripping my staff. I was utterly confused. The way he spoke made it clear that she'd given the wrong answer. Her words had obviously displeased him, or at least that was the impression I got, and yet he had decided to help her. Did he see a spark of potential during their conversation or something? What was going through his head? I couldn't puzzle it out. Ariel led our group down the carpet and towards the exit. She wore a perfect poker face while Luke and Sylphie grinned triumphantly. And how could they not? Perugius was now officially supporting Ariel's bid for the throne. He was in her camp now, which meant I'd successfully completed my first mission from Orsted. I got up and started to follow the party, then paused and glanced back at the throne. Perugius was surrounded by his 12 followers, arrogantly perched on his chair, staring down at the rest of us. He'd been watching us leave, which naturally meant that our eyes met when I turned around.
What is it, Rudeus Grey Rat?
It's nothing. So, in the end, was that the right answer? Is that really what makes a true king?
It was not the answer I desired, no.
Then why did you agree to help her?
There was a time in the past when all of us thought that Gonius was the definition of a true king. He was flexible but cautious, generous but sensitive. He embraced his inadequacies, knowing all humans had them, and it was that very thing which made him adequate. On top of that, he looked at people as people, capitalized on their strengths and helped them grow. He, more than any other I knew, was the most qualified to lead the humans in their war-ravaged world.
Perugius certainly seemed to remember Gonius fondly. The man he spoke of sounded different from the man I'd read about. But he had seen Gonius for himself. Surely his account was more believable than any dusty old tome, though he might be seeing the past through rose-tinted glasses.
Ariel Asura doesn't bear the faintest resemblance to Gonius. However, observing how she conducted herself, I suddenly remembered something. Was this not the ideal king that Gonis had spoken of?
Gonis spoke of an ideal king?
Yes, he considered himself far from the ideal. He was always vocal about what he considered the ideal king, from his younger days hanging around pubs, to his time in campsites on the battlefield, and even after he became king. He said an ideal king is one other people are willing to sacrifice their lives for.
Ah, now I get it. So that's why Ariel had told him that a great king had the determination to carry on the will of others. A dozen or more retainers had already lost their lives for her. They died protecting her. They did that despite not knowing if she could truly ascend the throne or not. In fact, they knew the chances of it were slim. They knew their sacrifice might never be rewarded. It was all because they thought she was someone worth staking their life on. So while she wasn't the ideal king that Perugius had hoped for, she was what Gonis had considered the ideal king. There were as many ideals out there as there were people. I see. I understand now. Your ability to assess people is truly impressive. I bowed once before taking my leave.
Rudeus, Grey Rat.
I glanced back. He had left his chair and had started toward a different exit before calling out to me.
I have a question of my own.
Yes? What is it?
Why did you not mention Orsted in all of this? I hate that man, but his presence is not one I can ignore. Didn't you consider that things might go more smoothly if you brought him up?
Orsted had already told me that Perugius had refused him. Knowing that, I couldn't see how bringing Orsted into this would have improved the outcome at all. Was he testing me? You want some kind of clever retort. Neither Orsted nor I are the ones seeking kingship.
But Orsted does wish to see Ariel become king, yes? And you have aligned yourself with him, if I'm not mistaken. In which case, should you not have capitalized on his influence to further your aims?
Even if that sped things along, Princess Ariel would still be the one taking the throne, and she needs your help to do it. No matter how much help we provide, we are still outsiders. Unnecessarily using Orsted's name to force compliance will only breed enmity. That was a pretty badass answer if I do say so myself. Yep. As far as I was concerned, those getting involved here needed to chip in of their own volition. Once Ariel was king, she would have to run the country on her own. While I couldn't speak for Orsted, not knowing his plans, I had no demands to make of Ariel after this was over. Since I had no stakes in this, I shouldn't get too deeply involved.
That's a weak way of thinking.
Perugius spat before leaving the room. His 12 servants remained behind, and I could barely breathe under the weight of all their gazes. I hurried toward the door, unable to bear it. Holy crap, that was embarrassing. I guess that means half-hearted answers are a no-go with him. After leaving the audience chamber, I headed straight for Ariel's room. I didn't knock, instead busting the door open as I said, "Sorry for lagging behind." The first thing I saw was a pair of porcelain white shoulders. Sylphie had already peeled off Ariel's fancy clothing and was in the midst of loosening her corset.
Rudy, how dare you?
No need to fuss. Lord Rudeus has served our cause well. There is no need for him to seek permission to enter my quarters. If he considers a peek at my body a sufficient reward for his services, then that is a small price to pay.
What?
But Princess Ariel...
Oh, I see I wasn't being considerate enough. Lord Rudeus, my apologies, but I would appreciate it if you would step out.
I was already out of the door by the time she said that, and only caught what she was saying as I closed it behind me. I had no idea where she got her false impressions from, but I wasn't shamelessly walking in to sneak a peek while she was undressing. Although she does have a nice body. The same could be said of Eris, but hers was a product of intense training, while Ariel's figure was something she was naturally born with and didn't have to struggle to achieve. She had her genes to thank. If we were speaking of balance between top and bottom, though, Sylphie was no less impressive. Her chest and bottom were both tiny and flat. It was perfect symmetry. I loved that about her. Roxy, meanwhile, was a goddess, so she couldn't really be compared to anyone else. Next time, I'll be sure to knock. Besides, Not knocking in the past had led to me walking in on a pervert embracing his statue. That should have been enough of a lesson for me. I must be a slow learner. Wait. Hold up a second here. Luke was in the room with them, though, right? So he was allowed to look. Well, it wasn't surprising. Ariel probably felt more comfortable with him than anyone else.
Oh. All right, Rudy, you can come in now.
When I tried to step inside, she pushed her lip out in a pout.
Did you see her?
I noticed she wears white underwear. Sylphie's cheeks swelled with air as she scowled. I knew that she was also wearing white panties, because I peeked when she was changing last night. I poked at her, puffed up cheeks, and pushed my way inside. A few steps later, I felt Sylphie pinch my butt. Oh dear, Miss Sylphie.
What is it, Mr. Rudeus?
Let's save our fawning for when we get home, shall we? This time, she smacked my butt before marching to the corner of the room where she forcefully plopped herself on a chair. Her cheeks glowed red, which made her all the more adorable. Anyway, Ariel sat in a chair, having finished changing. She looked like a princess even in her casual wear. Was it because her clothes were expensive or the fact a real princess was wearing them? It didn't really matter either way. I apologize for walking in on you a moment ago when you were busy changing.
Not at all. So, what did you think?
Think about what?
My body.
Does she really have to ask me that? I just know Sylphie is going to be furious with me later. No, this was probably a test. Great, everyone wants to test me today. I better not pick the wrong answer this time. It was amazing, or so I would like to say, but personally, I prefer Sylphie's instead.
Is that truly how you feel? Then I must apologize for showing you something so unsightly.
I can't believe you'd say that.
Luke merely shrugged. Since we had successfully convinced Perugius to aid us, everyone was in good spirits.
Please, have a seat.
As soon as I settled across from her, her face turned solemn. Guess I should get serious, too.
Thanks to your efforts, Lord Rudeus, we can now move on to the next phase of our plan.
No, I haven't done anything.
No need to be humble. I only managed to find the answer because you took us to that library.
But she had found that answer on her own, and she was the one who swayed Perugius with it. Granted, maybe I could take some credit for the outcome since Derek wasn't here to convince Perugius on her behalf. And in my future self's timeline, she'd never succeeded in earning Perugius's trust on her own. Guess there's no harm in patting myself on the back for this one. Still, Orsted was responsible for more than half of the plan.
Now then, let's speak of what comes next. Lord Perugius advised us to return to the palace as soon as possible and set things up. I plan to heed his words and do just that.
Why do you mean by set things up?
Exactly what the words imply.
Yeah. See, the problem is, I don't know what they imply. I paused. Hold up. I should probably try to think for myself before I ask for an explanation. To sum things up, Perugius wasn't going to hit the road with us and walk the whole way to Asura Kingdom. Thus, he wanted to send Ariel ahead so she could set the stage for his entrance. This stage could be, for example, a party attended by dozens of nobles. Once we had that going, we could hail his entrance with his 12 spirits by ringing some fancy gongs. The nobles would all gape in surprise, gasping, "Ark, it's Perugius," before promptly prostrating themselves, or something like that anyway. Then, there's no real reason to rush, is there? Should we not spend a bit more time preparing?
We cannot afford to. I have received word that my father has grown deathly ill.
So that's it. Ariel has already heard about that. I wondered whether she had gotten that information through normal channels, or if the man-god had divulged the news to Luke, who then relayed it to her. I suspected the latter. But wait a minute. Couldn't it be possible that Ariel got that information directly from the man-god? Which would mean she could possibly be one of his apostles. If so, that will throw a big wrench in our plans. It was terrifying to think about. I would have to consult Orsted about the possibility of her being an apostle.
Judging by the look on your face, I take it you already knew.
Huh?
Since you're a servant of the dragon god, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you didn't bat an eye.
Ah, well, Master Luke's request was so sudden, and you seemed pretty driven to move ahead with your plans. I suspected something was up. Satisfied with my answer, she nodded. Phew.
I am sure you must have your own matters to attend to, in which case 14 or 15 days should be sufficient for you to wrap things up and prepare for our journey, yes?
She plans to set out in 2 weeks, huh? About 22 or 23 days had already passed since I first received Orsted's orders. That meant almost a month had passed since this all began. His estimation of when news of the king's health would arrive had proven to be accurate.
Fortunately, if we can enjoin Lord Perugius to prepare some teleportation circles for us, our journey will not take long. We should have some time to work with. Still, knowing my father is ill, I should like to return as soon as possible, lest it be too late. I would like to arrive before my brothers have a chance to secure their foothold.
Judging from her words, the king's illness was terminal. That would mean the crowning of a new king. If we dallied too long, Ariel would lose her chance to even compete for the throne. There was just one thing that worried me. Orsted had mentioned a thorn in Asura Kingdom we would have to deal with. High Minister Darius Silvaganius. According to Orsted, we needed to find Tristina, since she was his Achilles' heel. We could remove him from office as long as we had her on our side. It was tempting to think that he would no longer be a factor now that we'd secured Perugius' cooperation. But Orsted wouldn't have mentioned Darius if he wasn't an obstacle to our plans. With Perugius backing her, Ariel equaled the first prince in his faction in power and influence. Getting rid of Darius would put her ahead. If our victory was to be assured, I would have to take action again. Princess Ariel, speaking of teleportation circles, wouldn't it be better to have one placed near the border to Asura Kingdom than within the nation itself?
Oh, and why is that?
If word gets out that someone as prominent as a princess was able to slip into the kingdom without passing through the border, they may begin to suspect something unsavory at work, especially since teleportation circles are forbidden. If you were discovered to have used them, it would spark unnecessary questions. I think it would be better to make our way from the border to the capital. That way, the people can also get a glimpse of you as we pass by.
I see. That's a fair point.
Sweet! Now all I have to do is come up with some excuse for us to make contact with this organization Triss is in. I haven't really thought about how I'm going to go about doing that. But most outlaw-type organizations like that are willing to negotiate as long as money is involved.
I'm opposed to that idea. If His Majesty is truly ill, the first or second prince may have minions along the road to obstruct our return. Teleportation circles may be forbidden, but long as the ones we use aren't discovered, we can come up with excuses for how we got to the capital unnoticed.
That's a reasonable argument. Continue.
This time, we have Rudeus accompanying us. There should be no concerns when it comes to our strength in battle. Yet rumors say that the first prince has enlisted the services of a North Emperor. While the palace may hold its own dangers, I think we would be in even bigger jeopardy if we were caught on the open road by an experienced swordsman of the North God style.
True, we don't want to be targeted by that sort of opponent.
Both she and Sylphie seemed to prefer Luke's proposal over mine. The three of them had fled the kingdom and fought tooth and nail to get to this point, losing countless others in the process. It was only natural that they feared being attacked on the road. Still, now what? Should I make some excuse to go on ahead of them so I can make contact with Triss? No, it would defeat the purpose if something happened to Ariel and the others in the meantime. I had yet to satisfy all my suspicions that Luke was one of the man-god's apostles. His suggestion might even be at the behest of the man-god.
You both make sound arguments. Sylphie, what do you think?
Personally, I think we should teleport directly into the kingdom. We have no idea exactly where inside Asura this circle will take us, plus there can be no greater advantage than outwitting the first prince by not passing through the border checkpoint.
Uh-oh, so Sylphie backs Luke's idea?
Also, we managed to slip out of the country without causing much of a stir. I see no reason why we shouldn't secretly sneak our way back in. It would take over a month to travel on foot from the border. Such time could be better spent on other things.
As always, Sylphie's reasoning was sound and well articulated. It was easy to see her point and difficult to disagree with it.
Very well. I understand your point of view. In that case, we will proceed as planned and teleport inside Asura Kingdom.
Ariel made up her mind while I was busy evaluating Sylphie's persuasive skills. This was partly my own fault for not sharing more information with Sylphie ahead of time. Oh boy, what do I do now? My options were either to work separately from the main group and get in touch with Triss, or find someone to do it in my stead. Ghislaine wasn't really cut out for that kind of stuff. Elomilus was currently pregnant, and for that same reason I couldn't drag Cliff into this. Who else did I trust who also had a talent for negotiation? Seems like it'd be out of Zenoba's wheelhouse too. But maybe if I sent him along with Ginger. No. Ordering around another country's prince like that might cause issues for me later.
Enter!
Silvaro stepped inside. She glanced around the room, fluttering her wings before saying,
Just a moment ago, we discovered all of the teleportation circles inside Asura Kingdom have been destroyed.
Huh? The news came out of nowhere, blindsiding us.
What do you mean?
Allow me to explain. There!
Silveril filled us in on the details. Following our audience session, Perugius commanded Silveril to immediately activate one of his magic circles. One in his floating fortress led directly to a specific location in Asura Kingdom. When she tried to do so, she found it wouldn't respond. Silvaro sensed something was amiss and sent Aramanfi to investigate the circle on the other end, which was how they discovered it had been destroyed. He checked the other circles within Asura Kingdom, but each and every one of them had been destroyed as well.
And so, we are no longer able to teleport inside Asura Kingdom.
The closest teleportation circle now is near the nation's border. We would have to walk the rest of the way there. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the circles. There was no way it could be a coincidence. The only question was who? Was it the man god or Orsted? I could ask the latter tomorrow, and I would know for sure. Still, the situation triggered something unexpected suspicion toward me. Right after I suggested we not teleport into the kingdom, they were forced by circumstance to do just that, as if it were orchestrated. Luke eyed me warily, as if he was certain I knew something about this and simply wasn't sharing. Even Sylphie looked nervously over at me. I was sure they both thought it was Orsted's doing.
In that case, I suppose we have no other option. We will follow Lord Rudeus's suggestion.
But Princess Ariel,
Luke, inform Elamoy and Cleen of the situation, and please help them with preparations. Sylphie, come with me. We need to pay our respects to the ladies and gentlemen of Renoa Kingdom. I will leave you to your own devices, Lord Rudeus. Be sure to say farewell to your family and friends for the time being.
as you command.
Despite the unease lingering in the air, we all parted ways. Chapter 9. Before traveling to Asura Kingdom. For the third time, I met Orsted at the cottage on the outskirts of Sharia. And that is how Ariel wound up convincing Lord Perugius to help her, and how we discovered we wouldn't be able to access the magic circles located within the Asuran border. It looks so sinister when he does that, but I guess it's probably just his normal smile.
By Stid. You did well, then.
If the wrinkle in his brow was any indication, he was plotting something even as he complimented me. Nah, his face always looks like that.
But I would advise you to never return to the library labyrinth again. That demon king holds grudges.
Okay, I understand. Sadly, I wasn't spared a reprimand for my failure there. Orsted even scowled at me as he said it. No, actually, I think he was just exasperated with me. His expression seemed to say, "How in the world did you end up causing so much trouble in a library of all places?" But it wasn't really my fault now, was it? I had no idea Luke was going to bawl like a baby over a book. I don't suppose there's any way they would accept an apology?
That would be futile. Demon kings don't operate on common sense.
From my scant interaction with this Demon King, it seemed like they might actually be willing to hear me out, but Orsted didn't seem to think so. Admittedly, we'd made a bit of a mess. We wrecked a number of bookshelves as we escaped, even though we had no other choice. I wanted to express how sorry I was at least, but I was giving up on ever going back as Orsted advised. Perhaps never showing my face there again was the best apology I could give. Nah, in the case of that Demon King, the best thing I can do is probably write in my diary. Daily updates would be impossible, but I would try to do it as much as possible. Anyway, that aside, what do you think about this teleportation circle business? The group had all suspected my involvement for a moment. They came to their senses immediately after, but that was still enough to put a seed of doubt in their heads, to make them think I was hiding something.
The man-god's work, I am sure, seems like his first attempt to thwart us failed.
Orsted nodded to himself, confident in his explanation. He was in unusually good spirits. He kept mumbling something like, "Just one more person." I had no idea what he meant, but would be grateful for any enlightenment. If you don't mind, could you fill me in on what you mean by the man-god failing?
Indeed. Perugius confirmed that these teleportation circles of his are unusable, yes?
Correct, boss man, sir.
Bossman, sir, there are not many of these circles within Asura's borders. Most were placed so that royals and nobles could escape if they ever found themselves back into a corner. Among them, several are already non-functional, and those are the ones Perugius has made use of.
Huh, interesting. So they're like a secret escape route for the royal family.
Thus you have your answer.
I see. So that's my answer. Like hell it is. That's no answer at all. What do you mean by that? Please explain. I need something more concrete to work with here. Orsted scowled menacingly. Okay, not menacingly. That's just how his face always looks.
Simply put, these teleportation circles are in places where your average civilian cannot happen upon them. Many are protected by soldiers. Someone who can go in and destroy them must be someone of respectable authority, either a noble or a high-ranking aristocrat.
Okay, I get where you're going with this. And yes, sir. Okay, let's go over this. The culprit, who was either a royal or high-ranking aristocrat with the authority to enter a restricted area, had suddenly cut off their own lifeline by destroying all the circles that acted as escape routes for them. Not to mention, these were already non-functioning circles that Perugius might use to travel. The possibility that the man-god orchestrated all this seemed astronomically high. A normal citizen had no reason to destroy a magic circle. That meant one of his apostles was either a royal or someone in a position to manipulate the royal family. The most likely candidates for that role were, first, Prince Grable or High Minister Darius. One of them is the man-god's apostle.
Indeed. The spread of those circles across the kingdom implicates the involvement of High Minister Darius, since his private soldiers are scattered throughout the nation.
Ooh. Now I'm starting to see the bigger picture. I had no idea he had a private army dispersed throughout Asura, but it makes sense. So we can be reasonably sure High Minister Darius is the man-god's apostle then.
Yes, there is a possibility it might be the first prince, but that changes nothing. We'll have to kill them both regardless.
Well, the first prince is Ariel's enemy, so that makes sense. But does that justify us murdering a prince? Guess it doesn't matter. If Orsted says it needs doing, I'll have to do.
That means there is just one apostle left unaccounted for.
Just one? That means you are certain Luke is an apostle now?
There can be no doubt.
What about Ariel? Is she a possibility?
No.
Okay, come on. Enough with the vague answers. And what do you base that on?
There are certain people the man-god cannot manipulate.
Okay, so, how can you tell that she's one of them?
Intuition. Based on many years of experience. Based on many years of experience.
Intuition. Huh. He'd paused briefly before he answered, which meant he was certain Ariel wasn't an apostle but couldn't tell me his real reasoning. I decided not to pry any further. There were more important questions on my mind. What happens if your intuition turns out to be wrong and she is an apostle?
If that should happen, I will take responsibility and dispose of her myself.
Dispose of, as in kill? That was harsh, especially considering how close we'd grown over the past few weeks, including the incident where I'd walked in on her while she was changing. But if Orsted was willing to stake that much on her not being the man-god's apostle, I should probably trust him. In that case, maybe I should share information about him with Ariel? His curse didn't seem to have as much of an effect on her, and if she wasn't one of the man-god's apostles, it might be better to disclose everything to her. That way, she could work with us to keep an eye on Luke. Nah, best not to do that. Like Sylphie, she trusted him implicitly. She would never believe that he would work for her destruction, and Luke was only doing what he thought was best for her. Bringing up the man-god would be kicking the hornet's nest. Luke wasn't Ariel's enemy. Being manipulated by the man-god hadn't changed his allegiance. He was only doing things that sounded like a good idea to him, despite the fact that they were anything but. Right now, Orsted considered him a mere spy who observed my actions and reported them to the man-god. He wouldn't do anything to directly harm Ariel. However, he might end up acting on the man-god's advice to do something that seemed like it would help Ariel on the surface, but would ultimately lead to her doom. That's what truly made him dangerous. I could understand Orsted's instinctive desire to kill him. Sir Orsted, there is something I would like to clear with you, just to be on the safe side regarding how I should approach our battle with the man-god. Do you mind if I pick your...
What?
I started outlining his war with the man-god. First, we knew the man-god could see the future. His view of it was both expansive and precise. He also had the ability to manipulate people to change the course of that future. However, he could not see events relating to Orsted. The dragon god's secret arts were stronger than the man-god's prescient vision. Whenever Orsted got involved in an affair, the man-god would see a false reflection of the future. Thus, he knew Orsted was involved whenever he sensed something slightly amiss or the future experienced a dramatic shift. But he couldn't see exactly how Orsted had brought about those changes. All he could do was guess. If he couldn't work out Orsted's objectives or what he had planned, the man-god couldn't respond accordingly and influence the future in a way that benefited him. Orsted's curse meant none of the man-god's apostles had been able to get close enough to spy on his activities, so his movements had gone undetected. At the same time, that curse also limited the scope of what he could accomplish. It was only now, after I had joined him, that he had more options at his disposal. As far as the man-god was concerned, I was currently an invisible pawn on the chessboard. But if I took concrete action, he could suss out what Orsted was planning. That was why I was keeping my movements discreet, so I could avoid showing my hand to Luke, who was acting as the man-god's eyes and ears. I also withheld information from Sylphie and Ariel, since I knew how much they trusted him and that they would answer whatever questions he asked. They say you can't put doors over people's mouths, so I've tried not to say anything to anyone, far as I can help it. I plan to keep Orsted's aims and actions as secret as possible. That might make me look suspicious to the others, as it had this time, but this would lead us to victory for sure. We would keep our intentions under wraps while defeating the man-god's apostles as we work to achieve our objectives. I would serve Orsted for the rest of my life, and 100 years from now, he would come out on top. And that's my interpretation of the situation. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
In that case, everything I had done up until now was technically correct. Rudeus had called me weak, but we were on the path toward our goal. For now, we knew that Luke and Darius were the most likely candidates to be the man-god's apostles. That left one other. I wonder who the last person is.
I know not, but judging by the man-god's past patterns, it is highly likely to be someone extremely skilled at either martial arts or magic.
Someone skilled at martial arts or magic. He did say it wouldn't be anyone in my family, right? Which means Eris and Sylphie are out of the running, fortunately. Come to think of it, my future self's diary mentioned a North Emperor and Water God in Asura Kingdom. Ariel also mentioned the first prince was employing a North Emperor. Could it be the North Emperor or Water God?
Aber and Rada, yes, there is a good chance. When you leave for Asura Kingdom, be wary.
You won't be coming along?
I will be tailing behind you, of course, but we will not be operating together.
The way he said tailing behind you sounded sinister, as if he was going to shadow me like a puppet master. Well, that means I can consult him if anything crops up. It's not so bad. All right, in that case, Luke, Darius, Aber, and Rita are the ones I should watch out for.
Indeed. You may kill Darius, Aber, or Rada if you like. As for Luke, keep an eye on the situation and use your judgment. If necessary, dispose of him.
You want me to decide whether to kill any of them?
Yes, I leave it to your discretion.
Did he seriously think I was someone capable of making those kinds of decisions? Sorry, silly question. Of course he did. I hadn't shown any hesitation when I attacked him and tried to claim his life, after all. Well, what shall we do until it's time to depart?
Make preparations.
Preparations, right? But what does that mean? What should I be preparing exactly?
First, get your equipment ready. You will likely be facing the man-god's apostles in battle while you're in Asura. With your strength, I am sure you will have no trouble, but it would be wise to bring some form of protection.
He turned and looked out of the cottage, where my magic armor lay in shambles. Zenoba was currently repairing it, but there was nowhere for us to store it in the city, so we had left it here.
That thing doesn't measure up to the armor of the fighting god, but it is still a spectacular piece of work. I am sure you must have labored hard to create it.
Well, yes, but we did get quite a bit of advice from the man-god on its construction.
Oh, then he dug his own grave. What do you call it?
Call what?
The armor.
Oh, magic armor.
But I see. What an uninspired name. Shall I give you a new one for it? Let's see.
No, but thank you. Orsted narrowed his eyes and chuckled. His smile was as unsettling as ever. Our taste in names, or lack thereof, aside, I wondered how Zenoba and Cliff would take it if they knew someone as supremely powerful as the dragon god Orsted had praised their creation.
If you plan to continue using that thing in the future, you should consider improving it. It currently drains you of all your mana in a single battle.
But even if we were to make a smaller, more efficient version, it wouldn't be finished in only 2 weeks.
Then we'll have to shelve that idea for another time.
Wonder if he'd be willing to lend a helping hand. In which case, I guess the Dragon God Society logo will end up being slapped on it.
Not being able to use Battle Aura certainly is inconvenient. For now, I'll see if I can't prepare a few magic items for you to use.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you. So Orsted was going to provide me with not just the best working environment and pay, but the best equipment as well. Damn. Makes sense, though. He did set me up with this robe, too. The difference between him and the man-god's inscrutable, completely hands-off approach was day and night. Speaking of which, I've been hearing a lot about the fighting god's armor lately. What is it exactly?
Demon Dragon King Laplace's greatest masterpiece and also his worst failure.
Laplace's masterpiece? So he's the one who made it, huh?
The armor itself glows golden with magical power and bestows immeasurable strength upon its wearer. However, the mana it contains is so great that it has given the armor a mind of its own. It assumes control over the wearer, forcing them to fight until they die. It's a cursed armor.
Cursed armor, huh? Guess the dragon folk have a knack for making those kinds of things. Laplace had made all manner of cursed items, from the supered spears to this golden armor. Nothing he'd created was any good.
Having said that, the armor is currently sleeping deep in the middle of the Ringus Sea.
Orsted seemed to know anything and everything. It made him a truly convenient resource. Nonetheless, I couldn't depend on him for everything. I had to find some things I could do independently. Sadly, there was only about 2 weeks till we were set to leave. There wasn't much I could do. I couldn't get complacent simply because I was Orsted's subordinate. He was a bit too aloof about matters. Or, more precisely, he seemed to think he could always try again if the first attempt failed. Perhaps he aimed to develop magic that could allow him to return to the past after reading my future self's diary. Or maybe he'd already experienced a time slip like that himself. Come to think of it, he once said something along the lines of trying again next time, and as soon as the words left his mouth, He made this awkward face as if he realized he'd slipped up. Maybe he'd been through these time slips not once or twice, but a number of times now. I had no idea why he would keep that under wraps, but since he hadn't mentioned it, he probably wouldn't answer me even if I asked. But even if Orsted could simply do things over again next time, there was no next time for me. You only get one life to live, or so I'd like to say, but that probably wasn't the most convincing coming from me, given my experience with reincarnation. Even so, after talking to my future self, watching his last moments, and reading his diary, I could sense how full of regrets he was. I couldn't just bank on wiping my slate clean and starting over if I messed up. Or rather, I felt like I would be betraying the person I'd been up till now if I kept up that mentality. Which is why I need to put everything I have into this. But how, specifically? Of course, I could hone my fighting and magical skills, but I didn't think that more practice would suddenly make me that much stronger. Were that possible, I would happily work out a strict regimen to boost my abilities, but it wasn't. On top of that, anything new I achieved in only 2 weeks of preparation would be unreliable and half-baked. It was better to continue building on the abilities I already had. Aside from that, I decided to set aside time to run some mock battles. I'd felt like something was lacking for a while now. Practice and training were important, but nothing could replace testing the techniques I'd learned in battle, sparring, as one might say if this was boxing, or exhibition matches if you preferred fighting game terminology. My sparring partner would be Eris. She was now a sword king, and far better than me at melee combat, so she would put up a good fight. If anything, I was more worried that she wouldn't find me a challenge. At least I could use my quagmire and deep mist spells to give her some new battle experience. As much as she boasted of her battle prowess, she was still vulnerable to traps that targeted her weaknesses. Also, I would ask Zenoba and Cliff to try repairing and improving my magic armor. It needed to be smaller and more fuel efficient, even if that meant reducing its capabilities. They probably couldn't get it done in 2 weeks, but it would serve me in the long run, so I wanted them to start on it now. With Orsted's help, we could surely finish the project over the next couple of years. It seemed he'd also provide any equipment we needed, so I was set on that front, at least. So that was how I planned to improve my training and gear. Now I just needed to think about what was left. With so little time left, I needed to plan carefully. So I decided to schedule my next 2 weeks. First, I would announce my upcoming long absence to the family. It wasn't a topic I wanted to broach, in part because I likely wouldn't be around when Roxy went into labor, but I couldn't avoid telling them forever. Next, I needed to get in touch with Cliff. In addition to the improvements I wanted him to make on the magic armor, I had one other request for him. Namely, I wanted him to conduct experiments on Orsted's curse. Come to think of it, I wonder if Orsted knows what's going on with Zenith. By the way, sir, I discovered in the library labyrinth that referred to a blessed child who could remove curses. That blessed child doesn't seem to be among the living now, but do you know of any other way I might cure her?
It's true that you may be able to return her to normalcy if you use this powerless blessed child's abilities. However, their skills are no substitute for an actual cure. If you try to force her mind back to what it was before, it may backfire and things might go in the opposite direction.
So there's decent odds it'll only make her worse, huh? Then again, after everything she'd been through, it was a miracle she was even alive. If trying to meddle with her mental state meant possibly making it worse, it was probably wiser to just keep an eye on her for now instead. Her condition wasn't a health concern at the moment. Guess I just gotta be patient and watch over her. All right, well, with that out of the way, I will begin preparations to set out for Asura Kingdom. I cleared up all the questions I had, so all that's left is doing the best I can in the time I've got. The following day, we had our family meeting as I planned. In fact, I feel like we've been having a lot of these family meetings lately. This time it was to announce my departure for Asura Kingdom. I told them I would be gone for about 3 to 4 months to help Ariel. The reaction to that was indifference.
Okay, well, good luck with that. Oh, but before you go, I'd appreciate it if you could make some soil for the garden.
So Princess Ariel will be dropping out of the academy then? I wonder if they'll have a farewell party?
This is odd. Last time we did this whole song and dance, they seemed a bit more, I don't know, emotional. I want a tear-filled farewell again. I want to be able to hug my sobbing sisters and console them by doing my best Terminator impression and saying, "I'll be back." Hey, Aisha. I might not be coming home this time.
Every time we do this, you always act like you won't be coming home, but then you show back up on our doorstep like it's no big deal.
I'd barely escaped death each time, but perhaps my little sisters didn't see it that way. Or perhaps they were trying to be considerate and not make me worry before I left. Whatever the case, I would do my best out there. I would be satisfied if the two of them could live their lives peacefully in the meantime.
Besides, this means there'll be another woman joining our household.
Exactly, which makes us feel silly for even worrying. And this time, you'll have Miss Sylphie and Miss Eris going with you. That gives us extra peace of mind.
As if on cue, Eris retreated to her room to begin packing for the journey. Earlier, when I'd first said where I would be going, she said,
Then I'm going too.
she hadn't even hesitated.
Speaking of, who do you think he'll bring back this time?
Hard to say for sure. Maybe one of the girls serving Princess Ariel, Miss Alamoy, or Miss Clean, perhaps?
My two sisters were saying some really rude things, but for the record, I didn't intend to take any more wives. For one, I had hardly ever spoken to either Alamoy or Clean. I thought of saying so, but on the other hand, I didn't really trust the head between my legs. But I seriously doubt anything like that is going to happen this time. I'll have Sylphie and Eris with me after all. Exactly. I had been alone in the past couple ventures, which had left me emotionally devastated. I drifted with the currents because I had no one to hold on to. I needed a levee to stop the overflow. Sylphie and Eris would make perfect dams. All I had to do was enlist their help, and the floodwaters would recede.
I will pray for your safety.
She and my mother acted no different than normal.
Miss Lilia. About Lucy. Please take good care of her.
Yes, my lady. I will take care of everything while you're away.
I know it's not good to leave her behind like this, but
You need not worry. This is the very reason you have a maid like me here.
Lucy had started to speak simple words, such as names of family members or pets like Mama, Asha, Lala, Oxy, Bibi, Dillo. My heart trembled with emotion, watching how hard she worked to get the words out. She had yet to call me Dada. She would say Rudy sometimes, but not Dada. I hadn't spent much time with her lately, so my name would probably be the last one she learned. And now, Sylphie and I were going to leave her behind to go on a trip. I had a feeling the two of us hadn't quite grasped what it meant to be parents yet. Especially me. I had no idea when that day would come. I did think Lucy was the most adorable angel, but thinking that wasn't the same thing as actually being a parent, was it?
So I won't see you again for 4 months? It will be lonely.
I wasn't just leaving my child behind, but a pregnant wife too. I felt awful about that. Well, I'm not sure. I would like to return before you give birth, if possible.
Don't worry. Take your time. As long as I have Miss Lilia and Aisha by my side when it's time, I don't need you here. In exchange, I'd like you to bring me back a souvenir. I would love to eat some of Asura Kingdom's sweet and sour candies, those dried fruits slathered in sugar. Those are delicious.
Roxy was back to her usual poker face. She was probably anxious, since this would be her first birth, but she didn't let any of that inner turmoil show.
That's a pitiful look you have on your face, Rudy. I have no idea what you're worried about, but in the Midgard tribe, it's natural for the men to go out hunting while the women stay at home to protect the house and children.
She puffed out her chest as she spoke, ever the reliable wife. I knew everything would probably turn out fine if I left it in her hands, but could I really justify leaving her like this?
It is a bit of a shame, though, since I finally got this long vacation. I thought I'd be able to spend it quietly with you.
Yeah, I wish we could have done that. Roxy had taken time off until the baby's birth. In Renoa, it was normal for a wife to quit her job when she got pregnant so she could focus on raising her child. But Roxy wanted to continue being a professor, so she persuaded Genius to give her some maternity leave. I didn't learn until afterward that she had used my name to get her way, but if that got her what she wanted, then by all means. There was still a little time left before our departure. I decided to spend the spare minutes and hours I could find with Roxy. That night, I heard Sylphie and Eris's heated voices spilling from the latter's room. Sylphie would say something, and Eris would snap back. From the other side of the door, I caught Eris shouting words like why and how come. Each time, Sylphie would respond calmly, and gradually, Eris's tone grew quieter until, at the end, she finally mumbled, "Fine, I get it." Later, Eris came to my room just as I had crawled into bed and was about to fall asleep. She sullenly burrowed under the covers and wrapped her arms around me, pulling me close as one would a body pillow, her soft, ample breasts pressed against me. "Oh ho, not very chivalrous of you to sneak in here in the middle of the night and tempt me with these. Not that I minded, I was a gentleman of the night myself, as far as sex was concerned, anyway. But before we got into that, there was one thing I needed to ask her." "Did you have a fight with Sylphie?"
No.
Okay. I hadn't heard any fists flying. It was possible that if I slipped from bed and went to Eris's room, I might find Sylphie passed out on the floor, but I decided to take her word for it.
Starting tomorrow, I'll be tagging along with Sylphie. We're going to meet with Ghislaine and help get things ready.
Ariel had already begun making preparations. She was going to pull out of the academy to return home, and the short notice meant packing was a nightmare. She also had to make calls to various people in the region, which was probably why Eris had been asked to help out as a bodyguard.
So in the meantime, she wants you to spend as much time as you can with Roxy.
She? You mean Sylphie?
Yep.
So that was why the two were having a row. Sylphie was trying to be considerate of Roxy, and if I had less on my plate to deal with, then I could spend more time with her. She'd really thought this through. Still, I was shocked she'd managed to persuade Eris without having to throw down. Eris sure had matured. She was no longer the same girl who pummeled people indiscriminately. If you made a well-reasoned argument, she would actually hear you out.
And that's why she said, I could have you tonight.
Perhaps I spoke too soon. Apparently, Eris had set her own conditions. Even so, it was still impressive that she agreed to Sylphie's proposal. She had mellowed out. She had been so self-centered all those years ago. Now, that was gone. Her raging passion had cooled, and her clenched fists would no longer find their way to faces. The berserker princess was dead. The wild monkey silenced, the mad wolf claimed by eternal sleep. The heiress who had bared her teeth at everyone was gone forever. Nah, this is probably an exception. It was just like Sylphie to give up her turn with me as part of their agreement, setting aside her own desires. I would have to do my best to shower her with kindness while we were on our trip. Preoccupied with those thoughts, I wrapped my arms around Eris. Almost immediately, she began tearing my clothes off. You know, it'd be awful timing if you found out you were pregnant on the trip, so maybe we should take today easy, and...
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
And she had her way with me that night, just like she always did. Family planning were clearly words that did not exist in her dictionary. The following day, Cliff happened to come by for a visit.
Hey, Rudeus, if you're free tonight, want to go out to eat?
It was a dinner invitation, and the only people going were Cliff, Zenobia, and I. I'd never had a boys' night out. Normally when we did this, Sylphie, Elenialis, and a number of others would tag along. Maybe this time the other lads planned on going somewhere too raunchy for the girls. Or maybe they wanted to discuss something that would be too awkward to bring up with women present. All right, we'll another, White said. Whatever the case, I instantly agreed. I had no reason to turn him down, and more importantly, I had a favor I wanted to ask of him anyway, so this was perfect timing. The sun was beginning to set when I met Cliff and Zenobia at the agreed-upon spot. The restaurant they brought me to was more posh than the places we usually frequented. As we entered, I paused to check the sign out front, which read the Red Sea Eagle. This was a naming trend in the Three Magic Nations. Places with eagle in the name were typically restaurants, while falcon was for bars and pubs, bat for brothels, and horse for inns. Granted, not every establishment followed this nomenclature. Some places would start out serving excellent alcohol, but then the proprietor improved their cooking skills and food became their mainstay. It was surprisingly common, in fact. So the naming trend was more like a general guideline. The Red Sea Eagle was exactly the kind of place Cliff would select, sophisticated and luxurious. The customers were mostly minor nobility or rich merchants. One of the staff guided us to a stylish room. According to them, this was the third best room they had to offer. Had we known Lord Rudeus would be paying us a visit, we would have prepared one of the better rooms, they said, but there was no need to apologize on my account. So this is what a luxury restaurant looks like, huh? When Cliff said we would be going out to dinner, I figured we'd be getting some casual chow, but this place actually had dinner courses. The four of us took our seats at a square table.
Now, then, Rudeus, do you know why we came here, why we specially reserved a room to speak with you?
He seemed sort of angry, and I had a feeling I knew why. Is today your birthday?
My birthday has already passed.
Hold on, is he 20 now, or 21? He was baby-faced, so he looked 5 years younger than he actually was, but by this world's standards, he'd long reached adulthood. Some people already had 2 or 3 children by his age.
We are here for something else.
All right. I sat up straighter. Apparently, we were about to have a serious conversation.
You see,
Knowing Cliff, it was probably about Orsted. I had sworn I would fill him in on the details about what happened with Orsted when I returned home after getting beaten to a pulp, but I never did make good on that promise. I figured he'd called me here to give me an earful.
regarding the child, Elenilas and I are having been thinking of calling it Clive if it's a boy and El Clarice if it's a girl. What do you guys think?
Wait, a name? That's what we came here for today? So I had the completely wrong idea?
Basically, we will be going with a Millis-style name if it's a boy, and an Elf-style name if it's a girl. What are your thoughts, Rudeus?
Well, Clive sounds like the name of a clever man with Mushoku Tensei Volume 16 by Rifujin Namagonote, cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audio drama like this, please visit artale.ai and use promotion code ARTALE to activate your account. Now, enjoy the story. Good odds of making it as a politician, but it also sounds like a name someone with a fussy personality would have. El Clarice is a pretty name and has a nice ring to it, although I can't help feeling she might have a bad encounter with a thief in her future, one who will steal something important from her. Like her heart.
That was about what I figured you would say. Actually, that was a joke. We've already decided on the names. While I do appreciate your input, that isn't why I brought you here today.
Oh, so he was just pulling my leg. Couldn't have done it with a straighter face. If you're gonna mess around, at least smile a bit. Both you and Zenoba look stiff as statues, you know?
Surely, you have already guessed what it's about by now, Rudeus. It's related to your actions as of late.
Master, no matter what you decide to do, I have every intention of following you to the bitter end. That said, do you not think you have been a bit too secretive with us lately?
You think so?
Out of nowhere, you asked us to start building this insanely powerful armor for you. Midway through creating it, you began giving us extremely specific advice you wouldn't even share who you were going up against. And then we find out it's one of the 7 great
Zenoba was interrupted mid-sentence by the door swinging open. A staff member entered, carrying our drinks. Zenoba flinched and snapped his mouth shut, quietly waiting for them to finish distributing the beverages. Once they left, he resumed the conversation. While I suspected they had reserved this room to keep our conversation private, their attitudes made it clear it was partly out of fear of Orsted.
We find out your opponent is one of the 7 great powers, the dragon god Orsted. And not only that, since you went all out in battle, you completely decimated an entire forest.
Nah, it's still there. Well, half of it is, anyway.
And after all that, you capitulated.
I had no other choice.
For him to bring you to your knees without killing you after you wore that armor and threw everything you had at him, the man must be a monster. It's the only explanation.
Well, in a sense, Orsted was a type of monster. It was bad enough that he could nullify spells from a distance, but I didn't stand a chance against him in melee or combat either. Not that I was particularly skilled myself, but I'd still thought I could put up a decent fight.
Since you didn't seem too torn up about it, I assume the dragon god must be a decent man. But that man, is a demon in the flesh. A few days ago, I saw him with my own eyes, and I knew in an instant he was our enemy.
The two of them had a little scrap last week where Orsted completely knocked Zenoba out. That brief meeting was enough for him to be hit with Orsted's curse. But wait a minute. Until that point, he hadn't thought that poorly of Orsted. Which must mean the curse doesn't activate until someone actually meets him. Come to think of it, Aisha and Norn don't seem as repulsed by him as everyone else. Guess the curse won't affect them as long as they only know of him indirectly.
I have to assume you have lost your sanity to serve a man like that.
The curse had to be extremely potent for him to have such a strong reaction simply from seeing Orsted once.
Personally, I have yet to meet this Orsted myself, so I don't know what Zenoba means exactly. But Zenoba, Sylphie, and Roxy all seem to consider him dangerous. If they're all on the same page about him, he must be an evil man.
That was a shocking statement coming from a man who never seemed to listen to what other people were saying. However, from the sound of it, Cliff wasn't yet affected by the curse.
Agreeing to work under a man like that doesn't sound like the wise Rudeus I know.
Yeah, well, I'm not particularly wise. Still, this posed a problem. It would be hard to keep going when so many of those closest to me disapproved of Orsted.
But when you asked us to repair the magic armor, I finally realized you plan to fight him again, don't you? Dragon God Orsted, I mean.
Huh?
You're only pretending to work under him so you can wait for an opening and pounce. That's your strategy, right?
No. Orsted and I...
You don't have to say anything to me. The whole reason you asked us to improve the mana efficiency of the armor is because you want to make it accessible to Zenoba and me, right? In other words, you plan to have us fight with you eventually. Well, am I wrong?
Yes, you're absolutely wrong. It almost felt silly to argue the matter at this point. It was better to shrug it off and say sure. They'd eventually fight with me, and this was merely preparation for the battle to come. That way, they would eventually see for themselves, albeit gradually, that Orsted wasn't such a bad guy. So I started. Master Cliff. Then I paused. Given how close we were, I didn't think it was right to sugarcoat things and lie to suit my own self-interests. They might not believe the truth, but I had to at least try telling them.
What is it?
Actually, Orsted has a curse placed on him that makes everyone around him hate him. Would you believe me if I told you that?
What? Seriously?
An evil god tricked me, which is why I got stuck fighting Orsted in the first place. Would you believe that too?
An evil god? You mean the one you worship with the panties and the blood-stained cloth?
I'll murder you right where you sit if you dare say that again.
Sorry. I guess not that god then. Right, I get what you're saying. Keep going.
Whoops, I accidentally let my anger slip for a second there. Even so, it wasn't right to deride another person's religion. Roxy was a righteous goddess. Anyway, that's beside the point. That was how I wound up meeting Orsted. For whatever reason, his curse doesn't work on me, so the two of us were able to talk and work things out. In exchange for his forgiveness, I agreed to work alongside him to combat this evil god. Would you believe that as well?
I certainly won't. I am skeptical that a man like that would ever volunteer to fight alongside anyone else.
Think about it this way. Zenoba is only interested in dolls and figures, yet he's strangely insistent about his distaste for Orsted. Doesn't that strike you as odd? It has to be an effect from the curse.
Well, now that you mention it, no. When I think about it, Zenoba does care a lot about matters concerning you. If Orsted really is that untrustworthy, it only makes sense for him to worry.
Perhaps that was true. Maybe Zenoba really was worried for my well-being. I was grateful that he cared so much, but at the same time, this was one instance where I wished he didn't. Yes, Orsted was hiding some things from me, and I didn't yet know if I could trust him completely. Even so, I wasn't foolish enough to bounce between Orsted and the man-god, and risk making enemies of both. Well, guess I have no other choice. I'll just have to lie, then. All right, I understand. In that case, we'll go with Cliff's explanation.
My explanation? What do you mean?
Ahem. It's as you said, Master Cliff. I plan to eventually take Orsted down, but it's too early to make a move right now. I'll have to bide my time and do as he asks.
What about the conversation we just had? Then what about the conversation we just had?
Wishful thinking aloud. It'd be nice if that were the truth. With that in mind, I would appreciate your continued cooperation in the future.
I will have your back, Master. In preparation for the next battle with Orsted, I will make armor that even Julie could wear.
Great. Looking forward to it. I had no intention of making Julie fight, of course, but knowing he was motivated to go that far was enough. With that out of the way, there is something else I would like to ask of you.
Yeah.
I had originally planned to ask him for help combating Orsted's curse, but now I would have to explain it in a way that aligned better with his theory. You see, Orsted is actually protected by a sort of barrier.
A barrier? Like a magical one?
No, more like a curse. Cliff furrowed his brow. The curse makes it so that when you gaze upon Orsted, you automatically pull back, too intimidated to fight at full strength.
Really? He has a curse like that?
Yes, that is the whole reason I lost to him. I assume it must have been the same for you, Zenoba.
It did seem as though I had been defeated out of nowhere. I couldn't understand what had happened. Now that you mention it, I got the sense that my body wasn't moving the way it normally does.
Yeah, that's just your imagination, but I'll keep that to myself.
I see. Well, the curse like that would be bothersome indeed.
Yes, extremely bothersome. And for that very reason, I would like you to see if you can't do something about this curse of his.
But all my research has been centered specifically on Elenilas. I have no idea if it would work for Orsted.
Well, if it doesn't, then we'll just have to counter it some other way. But you can't work on your research on Elenias's curse while she is pregnant, right? So I'd like you to test how much you can weaken the effects of other curses in the meantime. Cliff was trying to become a specialist in curses. While he hadn't managed to completely suppress Elenias's curse, he had managed to significantly reduce its potency. I hoped that he could next look into weakening Orsted's curse so he wouldn't strike fear into everyone who looked upon him, or at least not as much as he did now.
But are you sure Orsted would agree to participate in such research? How are you going to trick him into it?
Orsted is like a wolf starving for prey. He hungers for battle. In reality, he's displeased by the effects of the curse as well. He said it himself. For once, he would like to face an opponent and fight them at full power without them cowering before him. That was a bald-faced lie. I would have to ask Orsted to play along and maintain this farce in front of Cliff. Time to set up my dominoes and let everything fall into place. Yep, that's why I need you to dive headfirst into researching him, no holds barred.
All right. I don't like deceiving people, but if you're sure about this, I'll give it a shot.
Woohoo! You the best ever, Master Cliff. Miss Elenilas, be sure to give him some good loving. With that out of the way, I could slowly start talking Sylphie and the others into seeing my side. Victory would be mine if I found a way to deal with Orsted's curse. On the other hand, the guilt I felt was no laughing matter. Why did I have to lie like this to everyone around me? It wasn't the morality of it that bothered me. Sometimes lies were just necessary. Even so, Cliff, Zenoba, Sylphie, Roxy, and Eris were all seriously worried about me. Lying to them made me feel like I was betraying them. I hope we could all laugh about it later once we managed to lift Orsted's curse. Well, that's that, then. I look forward to your continued assistance, Zenoba, Master Cliff.
Yes, I am relieved that you had something up your sleeve after all, Master.
It's no small task you've given me, but I'll take care of it.
With that, we all nodded. Not long later, our food finally arrived. Exquisite dishes lined the table, and we all had alcohol in our cups, which meant the banquet was ready to commence. All right, now that we've finished with the serious discussions, why don't we say cheers and dig in?
Yes, that's a good idea. What shall we raise our glasses to?
Well, there are no girls with us today, so I guess we can toast to male friendship. What do you think?
That's a little too sentimental, isn't it? Sentimental or not, I knew that neither Zenoba nor Cliff would ever betray me when it came down to it. That much was clear from my future self's diary. Cliff had helped me even at the risk of his entire country turning against him. Zenoba had stuck with me even when I became a real piece of shit. They were true, irreplaceable friends. Admittedly, I had lied to them today, but come what may, till death did us part, I wanted to be there for them. That thought alone made my eyes misty. So what if we were being too sentimental? In between my life in Japan and my time here, I had lived long enough to be a mushy old fart anyway. This suited me perfectly. In that case, to our friendship!
Yes, to friendship.
Cheers.
We clinked our glasses, spilling alcohol everywhere.
But speaking of male friendship, what kind of things do men even talk about in times like this?
Raunchy, sexy stuff?
Sexy stuff?
Yep, her name is Eris. She was actually a childhood friend.
Lady Eris? Now that name brings back memories. I wondered how the woman once referred to as the Mad Dog had turned out. I shall be sure to pay her my respects soon.
Zenoba and Eris hadn't really spoken much back in Asura Kingdom, but I guess he still remembered her nonetheless. She was rather intense, so it would be hard to forget her. Huh, wait a minute. Now that I think about it, Master Cliff, you knew about Eris before too, right? Didn't you say something about meeting her a long time ago?
WE had a brief interaction a long time ago. I don't feel anything for her now.
Ah, so he'd had a small encounter with her years ago. Odds were she had completely forgotten he existed. That wouldn't be surprising, knowing Eris.
Matter here is you, Rudeus. I told you this before, but women aren't collectibles. You can't just bring in a bunch of them to wait on you hand and foot, bruss.
Once the three of us were sufficiently drunk, Zenoba was the one who launched into sexy talk. The conversation started about the wife that he'd married years before, but turned into a horror story midway, before finally transitioning into a series of complaints about how she couldn't understand his dolls. Cliff and I joined in with anecdotes about Eris and Eleniles. Both were monsters in bed, so we could sympathize with one another's plight. Sadly, Zenoba quickly grew bored with this conversation, so we switched over to discussing my magic armor instead. When I began relaying the details of how I wore it in my fight with Orsted, the two of them listened eagerly, eyes alight with fascination. Apparently, giant robot versus super monster was a universally entertaining trope. In the course of this, I mentioned how Orsted had restored my missing arm. Without the prosthetic, I could feel up my wife's chests to my heart's content. But on the flip side, my strength had taken a serious hit. I could no longer do the same strenuous work that I could when I used the prosthetic arm.
We'll make another one right now.
Right now?
That's right. This restaurant should be closing soon. We can knock back a few drinks in my room while we work on creating a new prosthetic hand.
Sounds good. Let's go.
I suppose I have no other choice but to accompany you then.
The three of us left the restaurant as they closed for the night. On the way back to Cliff's room, we stopped to buy some drinks. Elenice, who should have been waiting at home, was nowhere to be seen when we arrived. We found a note saying she had left to visit my house, so at least there was no reason to worry. We carried our beverages into Cliff's study and began constructing a brand new prosthetic hand while nursing our drinks and babbling back and forth.
I'm telling you, if you make it that light, it won't have any strength to it. Ah, see? It broke. That's why I kept telling you. It's gotta be thicker.
Nonsense. With Master's Earth magic, we can do this. I swear to you.
Okay, hand it over here then. I'll show you what my magic can really do. Ooh, how's this?
Dummy, it's no different than it was a second ago.
Ha, your eyes fail to see the truth. But I swear to you, it's twice as strong as it was before. Try it for yourself.
It broke instantly.
Whoops.
In that case, let us revise our design. As long as one can insert their fingers into it, that's good enough. So if we alter where the palm is supposed to be here...
Hey, Zenoba, hold it just a moment.
Come now, Master. Everyone fails sometimes.
Let me try again. Just give me one more chance.
Haha, all right, but this is the last.
Making a prosthetic hand was proving extremely difficult, probably because we were all in a drunken stupor. No one had enough sense to make the right calls, so we were all getting too bold. Yet somehow, our work was surprisingly precise, or at least, I thought it was. Regardless, drinking with the boys and bantering while trying to make something turned out to be insanely fun. I was in high spirits. If another opportunity presents itself, I'd like to do this again, I thought to myself as we drank the night away. While the boys were busy getting hammered, shouting, "Ain't scared of no mama tonight," 3 pajama-clad girls sat on an enormous bed on the second floor of Rudeus's estate.
Today marks the 26th session of our regularly scheduled Grey Rat House meetings. Could we have a round of applause?
The blue-haired girl promptly clapped her hands. The red-haired girl sat with her legs folded under her, a serious expression on her face as she obeyed the command. One among them was old enough not to be called a girl anymore, but if anyone said as much, the master of the house would roar in anger like a demon possessed, so everyone was careful to keep their mouths shut. As the master would argue, she looked young enough to be a middle schooler, so what was the problem with calling her a girl? Although a person from the master's previous world would be perfectly justified in pointing out that that was precisely the problem. Digressions aside, the red-haired girl, Eris, stared blankly at the other 2 in her company. She had been training in the yard when Sylphie dragged her inside to this bedroom without explanation. She felt a bit lost. The white-haired girl, Sylphie, cleared her throat. She was wearing her usual soft 2-piece pajama set the kind Rudeus liked.
Since Eris joined us recently, allow me to
I will take care of the explanation. These meetings are something Sylphie came up with as a way for us to bond. We each have our own expectations and feelings of jealousy and possessiveness, but if we succumb to that and compete amongst ourselves, it will only hurt Rudy. As members of this household, our duty is to do all we can to make this a safe haven for him.
Eris glanced down at her own attire. It was plain and casual. She inwardly swore that she would go shopping tomorrow to find some proper pajamas.
Eris, are you listening?
Yeah.
But she was honestly still a bit confused, since she'd never imagined they held meetings like this.
At any rate, if there's anything you want to say to us, please do so here. Let's try not to do any bickering in front of Rudy, especially since he's been so busy lately. We'd like to keep from adding to his burdens as much as we can.
Got it.
No fighting inside the house, no causing trouble for Rudeus. Eris was born in the Asura Kingdom, and although her father, Philip, took only one wife, many houses in the kingdom had multiple wives. It was especially common in high-ranking noble houses who were eager to produce as many offspring as possible, since their line risked dying out otherwise. Even Eris's beloved grandfather had taken multiple partners. Eris recalled something her grandfather told her long ago. You can tell the caliber of a nobleman by how well his many wives get along with one another. The better the 3 of them got along, the more positively it would reflect on Rudeus.
With that out of the way, today's topic has to do with us. See, the 2 of us don't know you very well, Eris, and you don't know us very well either. That's why we'd like to take this opportunity to deepen our friendship.
As Sylphie spoke, she reached under the bed and pulled out a bottle of strong liquor that one could find just about anywhere. Roxy retrieved some cups and a tray of assorted snacks and placed it in the middle of the bed. Almost like a swordsman stabbing their blade into the ground, Sylphie set the bottle in the middle of their circle and declared,
For today we're gonna spill our guts, no holds barred. We'll each recount how we first met Rudeus and what brought us to where we are now. In the process, we'll demonstrate how deep our feelings for Rudy are.
Bring it on!
She was confident that her love for Rudeus was second to none.
In that case, I'll begin. Rudeus and I first met when he was still living in Buena Village. We were about 5 at the time.
Thus began the girls' only gathering at Rudeus's estate, a meeting which continued well into the night. Since Roxy was pregnant, she held off on the alcohol. Eris only got a little tipsy, perhaps due to a strong natural resistance. This meant Sylphie was the only one that got absolutely hammered.
You know, Rudy was the first friend I ever made. I've loved him ever since. Oh, it brings back so many memories. He squeezed me in his arms back then, too. Didn't say a word, just put his arms around me like this and squeezed.
The stench of booze thickened Sylphie's breath as she lashed onto Eris. Although Eris was a bit annoyed by Sylphie's clinginess, it didn't repulse her. She merely curled her lips, pouting.
So what? Rudeus hugged me when we were younger, too.
Yeah, you already told us. I'm so jealous. You got to be with Rudy during the best period of his life. You even got to be his first. How was it, by the way? Our first time together was incredible.
It was no big deal. Pretty normal, I guess. Besides, you got to have his first kid and marry him first. I'm more jealous of that.
Now, there's nothing wrong with not being his first. I haven't been his first for anything, but I am still perfectly happy.
Boo! You don't get to talk, Roxy. You're his number one. You're the one he respects the most.
Respect? I honestly don't understand why he seems to revere me so much.
Rudy told me it's because you taught him the most precious thing in the world. Something really special. I bet it's something pervy. Something he's really into.
He was plenty perverted by the time I came along. I had nothing to teach him in those matters. When he was younger, he even spied on me when I was showering. All I ever taught him was normal stuff.
Honestly, what did Rudeus see in her? From what Roxy could remember, he'd been pretty attached to her from the start. But what could she have possibly taught him back then that was so special? Nothing stood out in her mind.
Well, your special circumstances aside, even Eris has her own distinct charms. I'm really losing confidence over here.
Distinct charms? What's that supposed to mean?
I mean, you know. You're strong, right? I'm jealous you get to fight by Rudy's side. I worked hard to get where I am and have grown a lot, but I'll never compare to him. You saw it in the library labyrinths. Rudy's always trying to protect me. I appreciate that, but...
Despite seeing how anxious the other woman was, Eris didn't let those words swell her ego. She went to the sword sanctum precisely to train herself to be his equal. Her goal was to rival him in strength, and she had achieved that. She was confident she could beat him even if he whipped out his magic in battle. That brought her great satisfaction, but she still couldn't help feeling a little envious of the relationship between Sylphie and Rudeus, especially because she was strong enough to protect herself and could never be the woman Rudeus had to look out for. While Sylphie agonized over the issue, Roxy cocked her head and Eris crossed her arms. Out of the blue, the door to the room swung open.
Pardon me, mistresses.
Oh, it's you, Miss Lilia.
In walked a middle-aged woman in a maid outfit. Wisps of steam rose from a bowl of boiled potatoes and other assorted vegetables.
I brought you an extra late-night snack.
I apologize for inconveniencing you like this.
Not at all, Lady Roxy. Looking after you and the other mistresses of the house are part of my duties as a maid.
Roxy bowed her head in thanks, and Lilia dipped her chin in turn.
Well, I am most humbled and deeply, thankful.
Not at all, Lady Eris. You needn't thank me. Now that you are one of Rudeus's wives, that means I consider you my mistress as well.
Eris was still struggling on how to interact with Lilia. Her family's estate in the Fito region had employed a number of maids, but Eris got the feeling she shouldn't treat Lilia the same way. She was the mother of Rudeus's younger sister, after all. In a way, she was like a wet nurse or second mother to him. The last thing Eris wanted was to make Rudeus's mother hate her.
Also, you needn't use such polite language with me. I heard much of you when I lived in Boina village.
What did you hear?
Well, I heard that you were so violent, no one could get you under control, and that it would be difficult for you to ever live the life of a proper noblewoman.
Eris scowled, sticking out her bottom lip. Despite the development in her sword skills, she wasn't so different now. There was a period where she'd tried her best to fulfill the role given to her, but she'd thrown all that away.
But now look at you. You have turned into a stunning young lady. The sword god and even the lord of the Fittor region would be proud to see the woman you are now.
I guess But my dad and grandpa are all ready.
I apologize.
It's fine. That disaster affected everyone. I'm not the only one who lost someone. Rudeus's mom and dad were also...
Silence fell. In that brief exchange, the atmosphere in the room had turned gloomy. Steam continued to rise from the hot food Lilia had brought in.
See, come to think of it, Miss Lilia, you've been with Rudy since infancy, right?
Yes. I was hired to be his wet nurse, after all.
That means you knew him before Roxy and I ever met him. What was he like back then?
As an infant? I must confess, I found him a bit disturbing at first.
Huh? Why?
It's difficult to put into words. Lord Rudeus was as elusive as a ghost. He'd disappear suddenly, and just when you thought you'd found him, he'd have this creepy grin on his face. Perhaps that's why.
She smiled as she remembered the past. Why had she avoided Rudeus so much back then, even though he was such an adorable child? Lilia remembered feeling disgusted by him, but she had forgotten those emotions with time, and all that remained were happy memories.
But honestly, that's not any different from how he is now, right? Yes, true. Back then, whenever I picked him up, he would have this lecherous grin on his face as he groped my chest.
I don't think that has changed at all either, has it?
Now that you mention it, no, it hasn't.
Rudeus had been a pervert from the moment he was born, apparently. Lilia's stories left an awkward air in the room. And yet, there was one girl among them who snorted triumphantly.
If he liked Lilia's chest that much, then he should be plenty happy with mine. I was kinda worried, actually. Sylphie and Roxy are so tiny, I thought maybe my body wasn't his type.
Our Rudy isn't the type to judge a girl by her curves.
Now that I think about it, while we were traveling together, he did stare at girls' chests all the time.
What, even while you were traveling? Although, now that I think about it, he did find every excuse he could to touch my chest right after we got married. On my days off, he'd spend the whole day doing that.
He hasn't really touched mine that much. I wonder if he's just not interested in my chest.
Well, at any rate, I should excuse myself.
Miss Lilia, you should drink with us. It couldn't hurt to do so occasionally.
Yes. Now that you mention it, I don't remember you drinking much while we were in Buena Village either. As you well know, I can't have any right now. But since you're already here, why don't you join us?
But I have to look after Mistress Zenith.
Then bring her along too.
Yeah, we're all adult women here. We can drink together. We can drink together.
The one thing a drunkard didn't lack for was gusto, and these girls had that in spades right now. It took Sylphie no time at all to cajole Lilia into dragging Zenith into their drunken merrymaking. Eleanor was lonely that evening without Cliff. He had gone out earlier, insisting he had something to talk to Rudeus about man to man. Not wanting to dampen his pride, Eleanor wished him farewell while lauding herself for being such a virtuous and forgiving wife. However, she quickly enough found herself bored with nothing to do. She and Cliff had been having sex regularly despite her swollen belly, but with him gone, there was no way for her to satisfy her carnal urges. In fact, since she was pregnant, they were no worse than normal. She figured she would be fine skipping a day, and so she left their abode to visit the Grey Rat residence in order to check in on Sylphie and Roxy. She arrived to find a group of 5 ladies throwing their own drinking party.
Oh, dear me. Seems you girls are up to something fun.
Grandma, your tummy sure has gotten big. Is my little brother in there? Or will I get a little sister? Oh, wait. If Cliff is basically my father, then that makes Rudy,
When Elenilis walked in, Sylphie was in the midst of feeling up Eris's boobs from behind. For her part, Eris ignored Sylphie, eyes glued to the food she was silently shoving into her mouth as she nursed her drink. Zenith was sitting nearby, acting as Eris's personal drink refiller. Beside her, Lilia was chugging away from her own mug, with Roxy topping off her glass whenever it grew empty.
Miss Roxy, why is it that my daughter can't earn Lord Rudeus's love as well?
He does love her.
Disappointed as she was that she couldn't join in because of her pregnancy, Roxy still humored Lilia with an earnest response.
I wonder if that's really true. Well, admittedly, he does only see her as a younger sister.
But doesn't a woman's true happiness come from being loved by a man?
Well, I definitely am happy. But I don't think that's the only form of happiness one can have. Besides, Aisha is a talented girl. I am sure she will find a wonderful partner eventually.
Someone even better than Lord Rudeus?
Well, it would be difficult to find a man better than Rudy. When you put it like that, I really hit it big, didn't I? Like buying up a prime spot of land for pocket change before everyone realizes its value and the price shoots up.
Watching them, Elenilis remembered how single girls from the Adventurers Guild would gather to throw parties. Those lamenting how they couldn't snag a good man would regularly meet up to get drunk and make merry before ultimately getting told off by the bartender and ending up on the streets after closing hour where they'd nod off till morning. Elenilis would eagerly join those girls from the Adventurers Guild when she could. She had nothing to fear. Unlike them, she never lacked for male partners. The only reason she participated was so she could enjoy some alcohol with a group of people.
Rudeus would weep if he could see you girls like this. The only time a girl is supposed to get this inebriated is in her partner's company, when it's just the two of them.
Oh, don't say stuff like that, Grandma. Oh, hey, you're always teaching Roxy how to do stuff in bed, right? Why won't you teach me anything, huh? How come?
Oh, Sylphie, honestly, you are completely wasted. But as for why I have never taught you anything, it's because Rudeus will be more turned on by you if he thinks you're an innocent girl who doesn't know anything about sex.
All the more reason for you to teach me all kind of stuff. I'm tired of letting Rudy do whatever he wants to me in bed. It's about time I made him squeal for a change.
It took only a few seconds for Elenilis to abandon all good sense on seeing her granddaughter drunk as a skunk. She was a good talker, which was precisely why she decided it best to join the girls by drinking alongside them.
At any rate, I'm gonna get me a glass.
She barely managed to grab an empty one before Sylphie's hand shot out to stop her.
You can't. Girls with big tummies can't have alcohol.
Tell that to Roxy.
I don't gotta. Roxy isn't drinking, so there's no problems there. Plus, even if she did drink, she can use detoxification magic, so I don't gotta worry.
A sober Sylphie would never have said something like that, but she was already 3 sheets to the wind. Elenilis sighed, exasperated, and found an empty chair to flounce into.
You know, I learned how to use that magic too at the academy.
Well, I can do it without chanting an incantation.
Yes, how incredible. I would expect no less from my granddaughter.
And that's exactly why you can't drink. It's a no-no.
Yes, I understand.
Elenilis laughed off Sylphie's triumphant bragging and gave up on the idea of alcohol, opting to snack instead.
It's not 'cause I'm your granddaughter. It's thanks to Rudy teaching me. I do whatever he tells me to, whether it comes to magic or sex.
And it's because you're that kind of woman that you tempt him so.
Yeah. He acts way more motivated the morning after we've slept together.
It took Elenilis about an hour to catch up with Sylphie's high energy. That night, 4 of the women drank themselves into oblivion, guzzling down drinks as they let out all the negative feelings they'd built up. Their anxiety around Rudeus doing so many things in secret lately. Their suspicions about the man god in Orsted, and yet they were all optimistic that it would somehow work out. It was with that whirlwind of emotions that they knocked back their drinks and enjoyed themselves in drunken bliss. Roxy and Elenilis, who remained sober, were kind enough to humor the others in their numerous complaints until they eventually nodded off. It was they who cast detoxification magic on the others. When all was done at last, Elenilis returned to her home while Roxy retreated to her room. The latter made preparations for school tomorrow before slipping into bed. There was only one girl in the household who couldn't participate in their little party and sulkily slept the night away, but Roxy wouldn't even realize they'd left her out until the following morning. When my eyes cracked open, I found myself clinging to Zenoba. It should go without saying, but no homo, I only did this because I got totally smashed last night. That was some good alcohol we'd had. Honestly, I never got the point of drinking with a bunch of other men in my previous life, but it turned out that hanging with a bunch of guys I liked made the alcohol taste that much better. But my head is killing me. Since my head was pounding something fierce, I cast healing and detoxification magic on myself. The throbbing immediately receded. It was like taking a super-strength aspirin that kicked in immediately, washing away both the pain and its source. I did the same for Zenoba and Cliff, even though they were still sleeping like a couple of logs. The former had his foot resting on Cliff's face, which was probably why Cliff seemed to be having such a bad time sleeping. Sorry, buddy, but healing and detoxification magic can't take away the source of the stench. While my magic did an excellent job of easing the pain of a hangover, it didn't help with the dehydration. I decided to get a drink of water before my headache returned, using earth magic to conjure a cup and then water magic to fill. I paused as I noticed something in the middle of the room. Whatever it was shaped like an arm, but numerous metal plates had been layered together, making it slightly larger and thicker than a normal arm, and unwieldy besides. What was this thing supposed to be again? I racked my brain trying to recall the happenings of the previous night. In fact, where the heck am I anyway? I scanned the room, but I didn't recognize my surroundings. I was pretty sure that I had been here before, and I could tell it was Cliff's room at least. But other than that, let's see. I think we drank a bunch at the restaurant. Oh yeah, we got on the topic of remaking my prosthetic hand. Cliff said he had the materials here to draw magic circles for it, so that's why we came here to his place. That was where my recollection ended. Everything after that was murky. Judging by the evidence, we'd guzzled alcohol while working on making this new version of the prosthetic. Fuzzy as my brain was on the details, I did remember bits and pieces about our attempts not going to plan at all. I reached down and picked up the prosthetic or gauntlet, and inspected it. The thing was heavy, probably weighing about 10 kilograms, which meant I'd made it with my earth magic. I had even left a perfect slot in the palm where a magic stone could be embedded. It struggled to fit it on my hand while holding it, so I set it down and slipped my hand in. It fit like a glove. Earth, be thou my hand. Mana started pooling in my arm, feeding into the gauntlet, and gradually it became lighter and lighter. My sense of touch was less sensitive when wearing it, but I could easily pick up whatever I wanted, giving me fond nostalgia for the time I spent with my prosthetic. There was no mistaking it. This was the Zalif prosthesis, or the Zalif gauntlet, rather, if we were going for a more accurate term. We actually finished it. Indeed, we had successfully created the Zalif gauntlet. After that, the three of us groggily sat around and enjoyed the breakfast Elenialis made. She had come home at some early hour this morning. We did it.
Yeah.
Let's be sure to inscribe a clean blueprint for it later. While we celebrated the completion of the gauntlet, we lacked the energy to show much enthusiasm. No amount of healing or detoxification magic could restore the hours of sleep lost to partying till the wee hours. Well, see you.
Yep, let's drink again sometime.
Indeed, it was a pleasure.
We bid our quiet, reserved goodbyes, promising to do this again. My feet dragged as I made my way home. It was already almost noon, and the sun beat down on me. The summer heat was inescapable. This also meant the snow was long gone, and soon enough, the beast folk would enter mating season. Personally, I was eager to mate year-round, so the seasons didn't have much of an impact on me, but seeing how antsy everyone else was made me restless as well. Roxy's belly had begun to swell. I was looking forward to deciding on a name for our baby, but in just 2 weeks I would have to leave with Ariel for Asura Kingdom. I could instantly return home with teleportation magic, but we had no idea how many months we would be spending there. I hated the idea that I wouldn't be there for the birth. After all, by the time Roxy went into labor, she would have spent over 9 months with uncomfortable pregnancy symptoms, all so she could give birth to my child. There was little I could do for her in return, but I needed to show how grateful I was through my actions, at least. Wonder if it'll be a boy or girl. Since Lucy was a girl, I kind of wanted a boy this time. But honestly, it didn't matter either way. Come to think of it, Eris mentioned she wants to have a boy. Back in Japan, there were tips and tricks for determining the sex of your baby. But what were they again? Like, if you did thing A, then it would be easier to have a boy, and if you did thing B, it would be easier to have a girl, or something like that. I recalled vinegar being used at some point too. I wonder if you can change a baby's sex through magic in this world. Well, it didn't matter either way. We would lovingly raise our baby regardless of their sex. Eris would likely also wind up pregnant in no time. My concern with her was whether or not she would settle down and behave while pregnant. On top of that, she seemed to be in a rush to have a baby. In the middle of intimacy, she would pause numerous times to ask, "Can I get pregnant this way? And are you sure this is right?" Part of it was because she naturally had a high libido, but maybe part of it was that she felt a step behind the other girls, since Sylphie had already had Lucy and Roxy was currently pregnant. In Asura Kingdom, there was a strong sense that one couldn't openly declare themselves a man's wife until they had their child. I had no idea what Eris thought about that, but if she wanted to have a baby quickly so she could feel more secure, I would oblige her. Finally, I saw my house in the distance. Since I hadn't told the girls I would be staying out for the night, I figured they would probably be upset with me. Not that our household was strict about that kind of stuff. Perhaps it would be wise to make a concrete rule regarding curfew and staying out. Kidnappings were a common problem in this world, and there was no telling what the man-god might do. Lucy was growing up, so making a rule now would serve to protect her and our other future children. I'm home.
Oh, big brother, welcome home.
I saw neither hair nor hide of the rest of my family. Huh? Where is everyone? Did they all go out?
They were up late into the night. They're still asleep.
What? They were partying it up without little old me? Does that mean I was left out of all the fun? In other words, while I was out knocking back drinks with the boys, the girls had a celebration of their own. I could only hope they hadn't spent the time bad-mouthing me.
Can you believe them? They were so cold to me. While I was sleeping, they got together to have drinks and chat.
Oh, so you weren't a part of the festivities?
Nope. Leo and I slept together the whole night. Speaking of Leo, when I woke up this morning, I noticed the bed felt cold and wet. Leo apparently had an accident. I got on to him and he looked all dejected. He may look like a big dog, but he's still just a little pup.
Aisha sure seems to be enjoying her days here. So, what did you do? Did you wash your bedding?
Of course I did. Oh, and Miss Eris helped me out. She promised she wouldn't tell anyone since she used to wet the bed as well. I told her it wasn't me, but she wouldn't believe me. No matter what I said, please tell her the truth. I swear I have never once wet the bed since I was born.
I don't know. You sure about that?
Not you too! You guys are cruel.
We moved to the living room as we bantered. I wonder if Eris took part in this drinking party. It left me a little anxious, but it was good she seemed to be getting along with the other girls.
Rudeus, welcome home.
As I was lost in thought, Eris came down the stairs. She was wearing light, flexible clothing and carrying a wooden sword, even though her real weapon still rested at her hips. Good to be home. Going out for training now?
Yep, I have to train even harder.
I had no idea what they had discussed during their party, but she seemed to be in high spirits. Which reminds me, I have a favor to ask of her. Eris.
What?
Perhaps it was thanks to the sun on the walk back, but my head was clearer than before, and my body felt lighter too. All I needed was another glass of water, and I'd be good to go. One big glass. And while I was in the mood, it was the perfect time to ask. If you're going to do some training, how about having a mock battle with me? You know, like you and Ruizerd used to do while we were traveling together. Haven't done that in a long time. For a moment, she stared vacantly at me, but she soon recovered and flashed a grin.
Sounds good. I'll pound you into the ground like I used to.
Oh, well, I'll try my best to keep up. Since this was a mock battle, I hoped she'd at least hold enough back not to kill me. This is going to be okay, right? Right? I mean, she is a Sword King now, so she can hold herself back, right?
Well, I'm gonna head out to the garden first then.
With that promise made, I left to change clothes. Eris had become quite the badass since I last saw her, and I couldn't let myself look too pathetic in front of her. Time to get my game face on. The two of us stood apart, facing one another.
It's been a really long time since I sparred with you like this.
Sure has. How many years had it been since we traveled with Rudeus? About 5, if my approximation was correct.
I won't lose to you anymore.
Don't worry. I don't have any illusions about being able to win. I used to defeat her after I received my Eye of Foresight, but by the end of our journey, the advantage that gave me was negligible at best. The two of us had gone on to live different lives after we parted. Eris had spent all of her time studying the sword, doing nothing but fighting. Having seen her face off with Orsted, I could already tell I didn't stand a chance of beating her. That said, you don't have much experience fighting a mage, do you?
Nope.
And I've never faced off with anyone skilled enough to use something like the Sword of Light. Mock battles like these will help us prepare to face off against opponents of a similar skill level. Eris huffed, grinning from ear to ear. What's with her? I didn't really compliment her that much. Did I say something funny?
It really has been forever since we did this too.
Yeah, I guess so. Eris wasn't just referring to the sparring, she was recalling when I was her tutor and used to logically analyze what we were doing as we trained.
Well, with that out of the way, it's time to battle, just like before when we were traveling.
Yep, got it. She lifted her wooden sword, holding it high above her head, her favorite pose since childhood. However, things were different now. The moment she took that pose, the air around her settled. The tense, cocky aura about her disappeared in an instant. Panicked, I dropped into a fighting stance and gripped my staff, unleashing my Eye of Foresight. Whenever you're Before I could get the word out, Eris's figure blurred. By the time I finished the sentence, a force struck my right shoulder. I dropped my staff before I could register what had happened and went sprawling. The next thing I knew, I was staring at the sky. There was a delay before the pain hit, shooting through my shoulder. Irk. I couldn't move my right arm at all, which made me suspect she'd shattered my shoulder blade. I managed to reach my left hand over and started chanting, "Let this divine power be a satisfying nourishment, giving one who has lost their strength the strength to rise again." Healing. Slowly, the pain subsided. Eris appeared in my field of vision, still holding her sword above her head with a confused look on her face, as if to say, "What now? Can I strike you again?" "Hold it! Stop! I give!" I thrust my hand out to stay her, and she finally lowered her weapon. I took a breath and lifted myself off the ground. "Eris, was that the Sword of Light just now?"
Yep.
Aha, so that's the secret technique of the Sword God style. I had seen it once before, and Orsted had even hit me with the technique, but seeing it once again reinforced how ungodly fast it was. I hadn't had time to blink, let alone react. So that's what it was. Amazing. I didn't see it coming.
Right? I put everything I had into it.
Eris nodded, pleased by my compliment. Guess I'll have to work hard and find a way to counter it.
It won't be that easy.
Yeah, I don't expect I'll be able to do it today. Still, I couldn't look like a complete loser in front of her. I needed to make sure she could learn something from these mock battles. Well, to sum up the results of our battles, I lost miserably. Eris won 9 out of 10 of our matches. I frowned. I already knew Eris was strong. In fact, I'd already figured I would be no match for her before we started. The point of these mock battles was not for me to win, but to get stronger. Experiencing the best of the Sword God style was a valuable lesson in itself. Yet, as much as I appreciated that, I couldn't help feeling utterly dejected after having the snot kicked out of me again and again. I really did try everything. Quagmire, Deep Mist, Earth Fortress, Vacuum Wave, and Sonic Boom. I even tried using wind and sand to obscure her vision. I thought getting cornered would be her weakness, and it certainly was. But her Sword of Light was so fast it could overcome that. Even if we managed to strike each other at the same time, I still lost. I thought electric would be enough to knock us both out of the fight, but Eris kept a firm grip on her sword even as it shot through her and kept charging at me. She didn't lack guts, for sure. Meanwhile, all it took was one hit and I was out of the game. The ridiculous gap between her stamina and mine made me worry whether she'd feel disillusioned after all of this. I really am a loser, aren't I?
Why do you think that?
I mean, look at you. You worked hard and became this powerful as a result. While this is all my efforts have amounted to, I feel like I can't look you in the eye, especially with how many hours of training you put in compared to me. The one time I managed to snatch a win was when I managed to stop her sword with my Zalif gauntlet. Eris was thrown off by the abnormal resistance she felt through my sleeve, which left her gaping in surprise. I couldn't blame her. She thought she would break my arm with her swing, only to be met with steel that deflected her attack. The Zalif gauntlet had a sleeker design than its predecessor, though the two weighed about the same. Without thinking, Eris had blurted, "What? So you can make your arm hard too?" The sexual implications made had her cheeks flush brightly. Alas, there was only one part of my body I could harden like that, and it generally remained flaccid until nighttime. In any case, I might have won, but it wasn't because of my strength. Luck had favored me, and the same tactic wouldn't work twice. If she'd used a real sword instead of a wooden one, there was a good chance she would have lopped off my hand along with the gauntlet. As far as I was concerned, that win didn't count. My win rate then was 0%. Yep, just call me Big Loser Rudeus.
That's not true at all. We're talking swordplay versus magic here. In melee combat, it's only natural you'd lose.
Honestly, that was not the reaction I expected. In my mind, I had only imagined two scenarios. In one, she would sniff, puff out her chest, and say, "Of course, because I'm stronger." And then she would lose her temper and snap, "Rudeus, you need to train harder." In the other one, she would sigh, be disgusted, and say, "You bore me." Her response was so different that I was left gawking. Seriously, did I just hear the word melee come out of Eris's mouth?
We start within my preferred attack range, so you're at a disadvantage from the beginning. In fact, I'm the one who should be ashamed that you won even once.
Eris said all of that with a completely earnest look on her face. Am I hearing things? Is this really my Eris? I had to remind myself that she was a sword king now. Of course she would be knowledgeable about combat. It would be odd if she wasn't. She had spoken this analytically when she taught Norn swordsmanship too. Eris, I have one question.
What?
Who, taught you all that? Was it the Sword King? A Sword Emperor? I suspected it was one of those two. I wasn't really asking because I wanted to know who specifically taught her. Maybe I just wanted to reassure myself by confirming that she hadn't come up with all that on her own. If that's the case, I'm a hateful bastard. But I couldn't really help it. On the outside, it looked as though she hadn't changed at all, but so much about her was different, and it left me a little Fiji. Well, gobsmacked.
Aber was the one who taught me about melee.
As I figured, someone did teach her, but the name Auber gave me pause. I was pretty sure I had heard it somewhere before. Wait, the North Emperor? North Emperor Auber?
That's the one.
From what I understand, you were the Sword God's apprentice, but you're saying you also learned from the North Emperor?
And a bit from the Water God, too, yeah.
Water God right it too, huh? Of course, it wasn't surprising that she would pick up on other swordplay styles in the Sword Sanctum. It was in the place's very name. Or maybe those warriors had happened to swing by, and she had received unofficial lessons from them that way. Regardless, North Emperor Aber and Water God Rada were big names. Orsted mentioned there was a good chance we would be fighting those two in Asura, and lo and behold, they were the ones who taught Eris what she knew. I wondered if this was a trap. I wanted to believe it was a simple coincidence, but... Eris, to tell you the truth, there's a good chance we might be facing those two when we go to Asura.
Really?
Yeah, they're on the enemy's side. I thought that even Eris would find it difficult to face her former teachers. I tried to word it diplomatically, but she simply crossed her arms and grinned like she was ready to walk into battle.
Yeah, that gets me itching to fight.
She looked like she would gladly throw down with them right here and now. Apparently, she hadn't built the same kind of relationship with them as the one she had with Ghislaine. In fact, I wondered if she'd even made any friends at the Sword Sanctum. It worried me. Well, if you're raring to go, then I won't hold back when fighting them either.
Of course. You better not hold anything back with them.
Because you think it would be disrespectful?
Because they'll cut you in two in an instant. But don't worry, you have me to protect you.
All right. Reassuring as that should have been, being told they'd cut me in two was honestly terrifying. I definitely didn't want to face them head on. Maybe we could lure them into a trap or rig things so the conditions favored us. I'd have to bank on that. Well, thank you for doing this mock battle with me regardless.
No need to thank me. As your wife, it's my duty.
Oh, goodness. You're going to make me blush. Well then, as your husband, I'd better work hard so I can stand toe-to-toe with you.
You're fine as you are.
You? Sure?
Yeah. Everyone has their own role to play. In fact, if I know you have my back in battle, it'll put me at ease.
Huh. 5 years ago, Eris would never have said something like that. The skills she had picked up during the time she spent training were certainly the most notable thing, but she had matured mentally as well. I am really going to have to work hard so she doesn't feel disillusioned by me. I continued sparring with Eris as I made preparations for our departure. That included making improvements to my magic armor, working on a way to combat Orsted's curse, as well as packing for the trip. I did all of this while trying to spend more time with Roxy. Of course, I wasn't with her all the time. I had several meetings with Orsted where we discussed what abilities North Emperor Auber and Water God Rada might use, as well as how to counter them. We also worked out how to contact the band of thieves Triss was involved with. Just to be on the safe side, I brushed up on my geographical knowledge of Asura's capital, Ars, as well as the layout of the Silver Palace where the royals resided. I also introduced Cliff and Orsted so the former could begin studying Orsted's curse. I was pulling out all stops to do whatever I could, all while trying to set aside extra time to spend with Roxy. I wasn't stalking her, to be clear. Yeah, maybe I loitered in front of her door sometimes and snuck into her peripheral vision to get her attention. But most of the time I was pretty direct in asking for her time. Perhaps because she was pregnant, she was more willing than usual to accept my company. Not that she had ever refused it before, of course, but she was making a more concerted effort to approach me. It warmed my heart. She had always been a little aloof with me. If I was sitting on the couch, she would opt for one of the armchairs, or take a seat directly across from me, rather than settle in beside me. That had changed as of late. She would either cozy up beside me or plop herself in my lap. Can you believe that? In my lap! This was the same Roxy that hated being treated like a kid, but she was willingly perching herself on my legs. If that wasn't enough, her cheeks would light up, as if she was embarrassed to be doing it. No doubt it took more courage to do this than simply take a seat by my side. That was why I made sure to offer prayers of gratitude to my altar every night. My goddesses, thank you for letting me have such a happy life. One evening, Roxy and I found ourselves sitting on the living room couch side by side. We would often sit together and chat like this as the day drew to a close. We never ran out of things to talk about. Roxy would discuss how things were at school or news about the latest magical implements. Sometimes we would talk about our adventures following the displacement incident. None of the subjects were terribly important, but chatting with her always put me at ease. Hearing her voice alone was enough to make me happy. Roxy's words always carried deep nuance, filled with wisdom and enlightenment. I never spent a dull minute with her.
You're being too insecure. While a mage should keep their distance while attacking, if they get too far away, that means a greater delay before their attack hits.
But when I'm fighting someone with a sword, shouldn't I put some distance between myself and them? The subject of today's discussion was my match with Eris. Most people would judge me, saying it was wrong to bring up another woman when I was spending time with Roxy. But it was actually Roxy who broached the subject. She had watched our match, watched me get my butt handed to me.
True. If you're a magician facing a swordsman, the more distance you can get, the better position you'll be in. Your spell's impact may be delayed, but at least your opponent's attacks won't hit you either.
See? Like I was saying.
However, that all changes the moment you enter your opponent's attack range.
Really?
Once you're within their reach, they have the complete upper hand. After all, they're fast. Trying to put distance between yourself and them at that point is futile. You won't be able to move fast enough to get out of their range. They're going to come straight for you if you try that, and their attacks are like a cone-shaped wave that moves outward, meaning you're more likely to get hit by it the further you move away.
Yeah, I figured. I had experienced that numerous times in my practice battles against Eris. She usually charged at me as she attacked, but she also often kept me barely within range. From that position, she could counter any magic I tried to sling at her, and if I tried to fall back, she would chase me down. I had lost almost 30 times before realizing what she was doing.
Allow me to quiz you. When you're up against an opponent whose area of attack is in front of them, where is the most advantageous position on the field?
Behind the enemy?
Precisely. They're going to lunge forward with their attack, so their center of balance is going to be tilted forward. Even if they try to defend their rear with an attack, its power will be severely reduced. If you can withstand that, you'll have a chance to counter them. Thus, the key is to slip out of their attack range and flank them.
Makes sense. So it was better to charge forward instead of falling back. The most dangerous move was actually the best path to survival. Roxy's brilliance didn't surprise me. She wasn't my teacher for nothing. As an adventurer, she had probably seen her fair share of such situations. She'd probably taken down a number of powerful demon-like beasts at close range. Calling her a god was no exaggeration. My eyes sparkled as I stared at my wife, and she awkwardly averted her gaze.
Ahem. Well, I'm sure it will be difficult with Eris as your opponent. I certainly couldn't do it. So please don't ask me to demonstrate for you.
No, I am certain that if anyone could do it, you could.
No, I really couldn't. So stop looking at me like you think I'm some kind of invincible superhuman.
I'm not looking at you like that. My eyes are just sparkling because you're a goddess. Regardless, I finally had my answer. I shouldn't try to escape my opponent by falling back every time. I needed to charge forward at least occasionally, get the drop on my opponent, and halt their momentum with a counter of my own. That would force them to second-guess themselves, to make them doubt their usual method of charging in for the kill, and give me the advantage instead. If I could make them think it was a risk to close too much distance between us, that would actually make it so I could fall back and gain the upper hand. Granted, it wouldn't be that simple with Eris. I would just have to keep losing to her while cautiously testing my options.
Ahem. Well, Rudy, since your departure is fast approaching, I think it's about time you decided on a name for the baby.
Isn't thinking up a baby's name before going off on an adventure kind of an ill omen?
That's a superstition born of a human hero's story, right? It has nothing to do with the Migad tribe.
Oof, she'd rejected that outright. But an ill omen was still an ill omen. Still, if my goddess said it was nothing to worry about, there was no need to buy into the superstition. I would do as my goddess bid me.
In our village, it's the tribe leader's job to pick a name. And you're the leader of our household, right? So hurry up and make your decision.
Are you sure you want me to make that choice all on my own?
Of course. Of course. While you're gone, I'll be lovingly stroking my belly and calling our baby by whatever name you give it. That will bring me some happiness in your absence.
As she spoke, she caressed her stomach. I cupped my hand over hers and followed her motions. It was strange, thinking how this girl I had known for over a decade now held my baby within her. I'd experienced this same puzzling sensation before with Sylphie, and now I was again with Roxy. Happiness swelled in the depths of my chest. It was such a pleasant feeling, one I wanted to enjoy again and again.
What is it, Rudy? That laugh sounds just like Sylphie.
Just like Sylphie, huh? Nothing, really. Thinking about how much I like your tummy.
I'm not as slender as Sylphie, nor as fit and muscular as Eris, but if you still like my body, then you're welcome to touch it as much as you want.
Really? Although I'd already been doing just that for the past few minutes.
Half of the baby inside me belongs to you, after all.
What about you? How much of you belongs to me?
Everything, at least on the outside.
But I can't claim the baby inside too?
Half of the baby belongs to me. I won't budge on that.
Makes sense. I knew she was wise. That's right. A child belongs to both of its parents, and Roxy belongs to me. Let's see, what should we do about the name? Well, a Midgardian name would be something like Lola? The Midgard sure did seem to like names that started with Ro or Lo, but since our child was only half Midgardian, there was no reason we had to stick to tradition. I think it would be best if we took something from our names, Rudeus and Roxy, and combined them.
That's a good idea. Then, Rudeus or Lupsy? I don't think our names pair up very well.
Nonsense. We are a perfect match for one another. We couldn't simply slap our names together like that, though. Maybe we could change a vowel. Start the name off with, say, Re. Oh, crap. That sounded just like Old Man Riri from Tensei Bakabon. I could imagine our child humming Rere to themselves as they swept the floor with their bamboo broom. There was nothing wrong with wanting things clean, but that was definitely not what we needed right now. I liked the sound of the name that Roxy recommended a moment ago, Lola. It made me picture a young woman who was anxious to experience the feverish passion of love. But that wouldn't work either. I wanted something more Roxy-like. Something that sounded wise and yet endearing at the same time. I loved the way she turned when I called her name, and how she peered up at me wearing a perfect poker face as she asked, "What do you need?" And that was exactly the kind of name I wanted for our child. La, Lee, Lu, La, Lo. Which of them would be the best fitting for her baby? I got it. If it's a boy, we'll call him Loro. And if it's a girl, we'll call her Laura. How's that?
A fine idea. Laurel and Lara. I like the sound of those names.
Of course you do. I practically ripped those names straight out of Adventurers of Lolo, after all, with some slight alteration.
Doesn't that make you happy, Loro? Or Lara? Your father was kind enough to decide on a name for you.
Despite having the appearance of a middle schooler, the expression Roxy wore as she cooed at her stomach was like that of the Holy Mother. Divine. She's utterly divine, which means our baby will be a goddess's child.
Rudy.
Yes?
I know I acted like I wasn't worried at all a few days ago, but I expect you to come home safe and sound, okay? I want both of us to be able to hold this child together.
Yes, ma'am. She didn't have to tell me twice. Those indulgent days passed by quickly, and soon enough we had to depart for the kingdom. There were 8 of us in the party. Ariel's group consisted of Luke, Sylphie, Elamoy, and Cleen. Then there was Eris, Ghislaine, and me. We had a single carriage, which required 2 of our 5 horses to pull it. Ariel's trappings were rather modest for the second princess of a country as great as Asura. To the outside world, it would look like we were gearing up to sneak into the country. In reality, we planned to access a forbidden teleportation circle to transport ourselves in. Despite the secretive nature of our mission, there was a whole crowd at the entrance of the city waiting to see us off. This group included the vice principal, officers of the student council, the general manager of the Magicians Guild, the leader of the Magical Implement Workshop, and a handful of other heads of organizations, along with representatives for nobility and royalty from the 3 magic nations. They all swooped in one after the other to bid Ariel farewell. These guys don't understand the definition of covert, do they? Just because you're not throwing a party doesn't mean it's okay to gather en masse. Well, regardless, their presence here was proof that Ariel's efforts to make connections in Renoa had borne fruit. Perhaps a day would come when I would need to make use of those connections myself. Orsted was insanely powerful, but he didn't have very good relations with others. I was on my own on that front. I decided to mingle with the others and pay my respects to them. And thus, we set off for Asura Kingdom. Extra chapter, the Black Wolf Sword King. Ghislaine de Doldia's mornings began before the sun came up. She would change into the day's clothes, chug a glass of water, do some basic stretches, then leave the inn where she was staying. She'd spend the next hour walking around the city. It was quiet in the early mornings, but that didn't mean no one was up and about. People clustered behind large company buildings in front of the Adventurers Guild and at the city's entrance, where they sleepily bustled about. Ghislaine approached the city entrance as a team of adventurers were returning from a mission. They were a large group numbering over 20, most likely a famous clan. Behind them, a brawny horse pulled a large wagon housing an enormous bovine creature. This beast was a likely sudden mutation that appeared on the outskirts of the city, and this famous clan had accepted the quest to take care of it. Their faces were heavy with exhaustion, which suggested the mission had taken them days to complete. Ghislaine watched them for a while, then finally lost interest and turned to leave. After her walk, she returned to the inn, where she practiced with her sword in the courtyard. It was a simple exercise. All she did was swing her weapon over and over. She had done the same monotonous routine daily without fail for over a decade. Sword god Galfalion had ordered her to do this ages ago. She did it while she was at Sword Sanctum. She did it when she became an adventurer. She did it even after Eris and Saros took her in and she became a bodyguard and instructor in swordplay. She did it when she was teleported to the conflict zone during the displacement incident, as well as when she made it to the refugee camp in the Fitoa region where she helped Alphonse out. She continued doing it even after she reunited with Eris and returned to the Sword Sanctum. Even now, as Ariel's bodyguard, she never skipped a session. This training gave her a sense of her physical condition and mental state each day. Lately, her mind had been at peace. She'd had two objectives to fulfill: protect Eris and avenge Saros. Now, one of them was complete. She had safely delivered Eris back to Rudeus. That mission was over. Only one thing was left. Just one. Ghislaine liked that. Having one goal was straightforward. It was easy to understand, and she didn't have to strain herself over it. Even better, her path was already laid out before her. Rudeus had introduced her to Ariel, who understood what Ghislaine wanted to accomplish, and she had promised to let Ghislaine do just that. Finally, everything was simple. All she had to do when the time came was charge forth and cut her enemy down. This simplicity was why she felt so relaxed lately. That night, Ghislaine visited one of the Sharia's many pubs. Clamor filled the air, yet it was conspicuously quiet in her immediate vicinity. Despite being past her prime, Ghislaine was still a beauty, a beast woman with tanned skin and impressive musculature. And yet, no one tried to approach her. The dangerous aura she exuded reminded the people of the Berserker Sword King, who was the subject of endless rumors. The Berserker Sword King, a person who swung their fists indiscriminately and cut people down. A person who lacked all reason and never thought twice before unleashing their fury. Just meeting their gaze could provoke them into a fight, and they were an amazing sword fighter on top of all of that. The mystery surrounding them only stoked more fear, which was why everyone gave Ghislaine a wide berth. In truth, though, Ghislaine was the teacher of this rumored Berserker Sword King. She was not the woman herself. She sat in a seat by the counter, keeping to herself, quieter than any of the other customers as she nursed her drink. That made her even more intimidating, adding weight to the rumors. Of course, Ghislaine wasn't intentionally trying to be menacing. She was only waiting for her food to come. Ghislaine knew that this place had procured the meat of the beast those adventurers brought in this morning, which meant they would be serving up thick slices of juicy steak. That was why her gaze was glued to the kitchen, from which the scent of sizzling meat wafted out to tease her. She waited eagerly, salivating at the thought. The door suddenly swung open and a chime sounded to announce the arrival of a new guest. An elf with gorgeous hair, a beautiful face, and generous breasts strolled in. Her stomach, however, was so swollen it looked bizarre on her otherwise slender figure, a clear sign she was pregnant. As soon as other people in the pub spotted her, their faces lit up and they eagerly called out to her.
Hey, it's been a while. Not looking for any male partners anymore?
Come to think of it, you got hitched, didn't ya? Come grab a seat, let's knock back some drinks together.
The elf woman masterfully rebuffed their invitations, instead heading deeper into the pub, straight for the innermost seat along. Mushoku Tensei Vol16 by Refugin Namaganote, cast by Artist Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audio drama like this, please visit artail.ai and use promotion code ARTAIL to activate your account. Now, enjoy the story. The counter, there, she took up a spot beside the one person everyone else had been avoiding like the plague. They all watched her and gulped nervously.
Hey, Ghislaine! Sorry to keep you waiting.
Ellen Elias said in a sing-song voice as she turned to the beast woman.
You're late.
Well, I can't help that. After all, I'm pregnant.
Wait.
Ghislaine's sharp voice rang out, cutting Ellen Elias off mid-sentence. Shocked, Ellen Elias froze. The proprietor appeared from the kitchen, carrying an enormous wooden plate. He headed straight over to them and slammed the meal down in front of Ghislaine.
Is this what you wanted?
There was an iron plate over the wood, on top of which sat a sizzling steak with steam rising off it. It came with a side of grilled potatoes and assorted vegetables that only further taunted her growling belly.
Yep.
Ghislaine nodded, too preoccupied staring at the meat to spare the man a single glance.
Then take your time and enjoy the meal.
Oh, I'd like some water and snacks myself.
Ellen Elias said, calling after him.
Sure thing.
The proprietor hollered over his shoulder.
I'm completely exhausted. I've been through pregnancy countless times before, but it never gets any easier.
Uh-huh.
But I wonder why it is. I haven't grown to dislike it after going through it so many times.
Haha.
Speaking of which, your mating season should be soon, right? Isn't it about time you found yourself a partner? If you'd like, I'd be happy to pair you up with someone.
Aha.
Ghislaine never so much as glanced at Ellen Elias. She simply waited with her knife and fork in hand, staring at the slab of steaming meat. Drool dripped down her chin.
There is no need to wait on my account. Go ahead and eat.
You sure?
Of course. It won't be any good if it gets cold.
Meat is always good, even cold.
Even as she said that, Ghislaine began devouring the thick steak. It was a little rare, but it was still cooked through, which was the perfect way to prepare a fresh piece of meat like this. Ghislaine sawed through it, stabbed into a chunk, and tucked it in her mouth. It was slathered in tangy sauce, which eliminated the gaminess, giving it a savory smell and flavor. It was rare enough to be a little tender, but that was just right for Ghislaine. She tore into it, letting its natural juices fill her mouth.
This was heaven.
Ghislaine continued cutting her meat and devouring it, letting her cheeks fill with juice as she chewed. Once she swallowed, she was back to cutting another bite. She was silent the whole time, completely ignoring Ellen Elias's presence. Ellen Elias didn't mind, resting her cheek against her hand and watching.
Is it good? In that case, I was right to pick this place.
Ellen Elias was the one who'd clued Ghislaine in about the stakes here, since they had the fortune of reuniting after such a long time. Ellen Elias decided to invite Ghislaine out for dinner for a chat. Naturally, she picked the exact type of pub that Ghislaine loved.
Here you go,
announced the proprietor as he arrived with Ellen Elias's order. Ghislaine had already inhaled half of her steak by that point.
How unusual for you. Not going to drink?
Now that her stomach was no longer completely empty, she noticed that Ellen and I had only ordered water.
Yes, alcohol would be the better fit for our happy reunion and the depressing conversation we're about to have, but alas, I can't partake.
Ellen Elias said, lightly tapping her swollen stomach.
Okay then.
Ghislaine didn't bother trying to pressure her.
Recently, I actually tried to have some alcohol myself, but Sylphie stopped me, treated me like a child, telling me it was a no-no.
Ellen Elias wore a vacant expression as she caressed her stomach.
Heard you got married, but I never figured you'd be this devoted to one guy.
It's a surprise for me, too, but Cliff is a wonderful man. Sure, he's not very flexible and doesn't listen, but he's self-confident and has a strong sense of responsibility. When we have sex, he goes all out. He doesn't simply focus on his own pleasure. He tries his best to make sure I feel good as well. It's so utterly adorable. Oh, Ghislaine, you should try to find someone for yourself soon, too.
I'll pass. She had already given up on living as a woman, choosing instead to focus on leading her life as a sword fighter.
Well, I won't force you. More importantly...
Ellen Elias paused, lifting her glass and raising it toward Ghislaine. Ghislaine put her knife down and took up her flagon.
to a fond reunion between friends.
Yeah. Cheers.
The two former members of the Black Wolf Fangs had finally come together again.
It would have been better if Talhand and Geese were here to join us.
Paul and Zenith too.
In an instant, what was supposed to be a joyous meeting turned gloomy. But that was exactly why Ellen Allies had come here to have that conversation.
About Paul, it's a shame what happened. In a better world, I would have been the first one to go, not him.
He lived fast and reckless. I figured he'd meet his end sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I seem to remember you saying something like that a long time ago.
You're the one who said it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the fact that he's gone isn't that surprising to me.
Paul went out with a bang, though. Care to hear the story?
Yeah, tell me.
Annalise recounted the story as Ghislaine requested. She started by explaining how Paul got separated from his family and searched desperately for them. How, despite his womanizing ways, he turned temptations away and insisted on remaining loyal to Zenith. She also shared how his reunion with Rudeus went in Bagaret, how the two had talked, and how happy Paul had looked. Finally, she recalled the details of their battle and how Paul died protecting Rudeus.
He sure changed. Hard to believe that's the same man who always did stupid crap with you.
Oh, I seem to remember you being the biggest idiot of all, Ghislaine. As I recall, you would wag your tail every time you looked at Paul for a while there.
I was delusional. Must have been mating season. Besides, I'm not an Adoldia. My tail doesn't wag whenever I'm happy.
It was a figure of speech. But you really were adorable back then, always fussing over Paul at every turn.
That was a long time ago.
Ellen Iole sniggered, popping a sweetly seasoned bite of meat into her mouth. It wasn't as tender as Ghislaine's steak, so she had to chew a bit before swallowing. As Ghislaine watched, she decided to order the same thing.
Here, you can have this. Let's order something else instead and split it between us.
Ellen said, passing her plate over to her friend. The two feasted, letting the sound of munching fill the air between them for a while.
Zenith's condition was a bigger shock to me than Paul's death.
Once the plate was empty, Ghislaine responded,
Yeah, never would have dreamed I'd see her in such a state.
Indeed.
Ghislaine didn't respond.
That's just how it goes, I guess. We are adventurers. The fact that she's even alive should be cause for celebration. Besides, Rudeus is looking for a way to heal her. Who knows, maybe she will return to her normal self eventually.
Yeah?
Well, she may be an old woman by the time that day comes.
When that happens, hopefully we can drink together again.
I hope so, too. We'll have to call in Geese and Talhand when that day comes and have a huge party.
What are those two up to, anyway?
Well, after Talhand and I split up,
The two continued catching up, chatting about various topics. Elise talked about what happened after they split from the group, what they did following the displacement incident, how she met Rudeus. They even revisited their past adventures, such as the time they went diving into some old ruins trying to find the legendary holy sword. Then there was the time that Geese gambled all their money away, and they had to shake down some random people for funds. Most of their memories together were embarrassing, but they were precious, embedded deep within the two women's hearts. Elenilis's eyes were half crinkled shut as she jabbered away. Ghislaine had guzzled so much alcohol that she was totally smashed, her face vacant as she rested her chin on her hand.
oh dear. I rarely see you drink yourself into oblivion like this. Can you get back to your room on your own?
I'm fine. There are no wolves who'd bother coming after me anymore.
Ghislaine shot a look over her shoulder. Even the more rugged adventurers were quick to avert their eyes.
Maybe I should have taken up Lord Philip on his offer after all.
Philip? Oh, you mean the one from the Fito region?
Yeah. He asked me to become his mistress once.
Oh dear. You missed a prime opportunity there. You could have been set for life if you'd agreed to that.
I couldn't have faced Eris if I had agreed.
I'm shocked to hear you worry about such a thing. Oh?
Ghislaine's eyes were fixed on the wall, burning with fury.
Lord Philip is already dead. He didn't survive the displacement incident. I gave him a proper burial and claimed the heads of the ones who killed him.
Oh my, I didn't realize. That is a shame.
Lady Eris is married to Rudeus now. All that's left is to avenge Lord Sorrows.
She exuded such a menacing aura that several of the patrons decided to flee, sensing danger. Ellenise wasn't shaken by it. She knew Ghislaine was capable of turning vicious on the fly and cutting someone down, but she also knew that she wouldn't be the Beast Woman's target.
So that's why you became Her Highness's bodyguard.
Yep.
Elenella sighed and followed Ghislaine's gaze to the ceiling.
You sure have changed. You didn't used to be such a fiercely loyal knight.
Ghislaine froze and dropped her gaze to her glass, catching her own reflection in the amber liquid within. The answer came to her at once.
I'm a member of the Doldia tribe. That's why.
She abruptly stood, her gait so confident that it was hard to believe she was sloshed.
Where are you going?
Home.
Oh dear. Oh dear. You're as hasty as ever.
Elenila shrugged and lifted herself from her seat. She pulled out a silver coin from her pocket and slapped it on the counter. Then she hurried after her friend, who had already left the building and was disappearing down the dark street.
Ghislaine!
Ghislaine paused, ears twitching as she looked over her shoulder.
While you're in Asura Kingdom, be sure to protect Rudeus and Sylphie. Those two are my adorable grandchildren, you know.
Yeah, will do.
Ghislaine's tail perked up as she answered. With that, Elise turned the opposite direction, back to her humble home where Cliff waited. Ghislaine stared after her.
Her list of things to do had suddenly increased. On the other hand, it wasn't something she had to do. Protecting those two was something she planned to do anyway. I've gotten wiser.
She realized, pleased with herself. She was in high spirits as she headed back to her inn.